The Budapest Gambit. Imagine you're playing against a d4 player. They're playing their regular Queen's Gambit. They're expecting the King's Indian or the Nimza Indian, but then you play pawn to e5 and sacrifice a pawn. Now, here's why I like this line. First of all, if they decline the gambit, they're already in trouble. Like some persons play d5, be like, hey, I'm not taking that pawn. I don't know what's happening. But then you go bishop c5 and you're already attacking. If they play knight c3, just get your king out the center of the board. And they're going to have issues getting their king out the center. Very easy way in which people could blunder is trying to pin your knight with their bishop. Because all of a sudden, you could now sack your bishop. And then once the king takes, knight to g4, and you're picking up the bishop. They could also decline the gambit by developing their knight, but you take the pawn, force their queen to be developed, develop your knight, gain tempo on the queen, and once the queen moves, you develop your bishop, and being black, you get a lead in development. But here's the fun part. What happens when they accept the gambit? First of all, there's a very cool line that, you guys could try this out with knight to g4. Persons are going to want to defend the pawn with their knight, and you could actually just play d6 here. Because if they take on d6 thinking, yo, bro, you're giving me free pawns, now you take back with the bishop. We already have a lead in development. If they play h3 thinking, okay, let me just get that knight out of my half of the board, that's another way in which they're losing. Because now you sacrifice your knight. If the king takes on f2, bishop to g3 check. The king is just not able to do anything. Once the king takes the bishop, you take the queen, you're completely winning the game. You don't always have to play pawn to d6. Let's say you just play knight c6, and greedy persons are going to play moves like bishop to f4. In this position, just play the move bishop to b4 and check the king hand. If they play knight c3, you play queen e7, you're going to take back the pawn. If they play a3, you double up their pawn. So they don't want to get the double pawn. So a lot of persons are going to put the knight on d2, and then you play queen to e7. And who is not going to want to play a move like pawn to a3 to chase away your bishop? All you need to do in this position is just to take the pawn on e5 and be like, oh, blundered my bishop. And if they take the bishop, knight to d3 is a checkmate, and you're winning the game. Apart from the full theoretical video that will be available on the memberships, you're about to learn everything there is about the Budapest Gambit. All the traps, all the middle game plans, all the opening moves. You watch this full video, apply all the stuff that I teach, then your ratings will go through the roof. Kicking things off in the 500 region. Today I'm going to be showing you guys the Budapest Gambit. It's one of those lines that White has to know exactly what he's doing. After they play c4, that's when you surprise them with the move pawn to e5. Now, if they take, the guy accept the gambit. Let's go knight to g4 and attack the pawn. And knight f3 usually protects the pawn. And as I explained in the intro, feel free to try out this move, pawn to d6. You'll get some very nice traps with it. But let's just play knight c6. We're not trying to be too trappy. We want to win some nice games. Bishop to f4 was played though. What I explained in the intro is once they play bishop f4, we check them on b4 first. And once the knight goes to d2, it's when we play queen to e7. Now, a lot of persons are going to play pawn to a3 here. And if they play a3 or h3, there's also h3. By the way, guys, I didn't tell you guys about h3. But once they play either h3 or a3, we're just going to take on e5. And oh my lord, he took Mr. 500. He immediately took the pawn on b4, which means 8 moves into the Budapest Gambit, and that's just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 600 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 600. We're playing some more Budapest Gambit. After c4, we play e5. That's the whole idea. Persons do not know about this. And knight f3 is one way to decline the gambit, because they don't want to take the pawn. They don't know what they're going in. But the Budapest Gambit is one of those gambit where even if they decline the gambit, they're still going to be in trouble. Because now he plays knight to f3, but then I'm able to force him to move the same piece more than once in the opening. And I'm not making this up, guys. Just play knight e5, which means 5 moves into the Budapest Gambit, and we're already winning a piece. Hopefully you saw how to win the piece. Very simple tactic. Well, it's not even a tactic. I'm just going to play pawn to d6, hits the knight, and the knight is now just trapped. So there's literally nowhere for him to put the knight, and we're just going to take the knight on the next move. Or if he sacrificed the knight, we take on f7. Maybe he's going to be like, hey, at least your king is not able to get castled. Who knows? Let's just play d5 though, so that way our bishop is able to be developed. I want to play c6 to solidify my pawn chain, and maybe just play bishop to d6. And I'm also thinking that maybe I could do a Greek gift sacrifice and checkmate his king that way if he tries to castle his king on the king side. Let's see. Okay, so he plays queen to b3, pointing the queen towards my king. Let's just play c6, solidifying everything. He develops his bishop, and now I'm going to go bishop to d6. Notice how my bishop is pointing towards h2, which means if he castles his king, we could start some very nice attack. But instead, he plays h3. I mean, maybe the guy has no intentions of even castling the king. So let's just focus on our development here. This knight needs to be developed. This bishop needs to be developed. But if I develop this bishop, I'm going to be losing this pawn. So let's just go knight to d7 and try to focus on developing my knight. Knight c3 was played, and here's something that I'm seeing, guys. First of all, his queen is on the same line as my king. Second of all, he has 1, 2, 3 attackers on d5. I only have 2 defenders on d5. It's actually not easy for me not to lose a pawn in this position, because if I takes bishop takes, I'm only helping his development. I'm more than likely I'm just going to allow him to take and then take. I just need to have a move for what happens when he plays knight takes. Let's pull this knight back to f8. So that way, when he plays knight takes, I should be able to go bishop to e6, pin the knight to the queen. That's my plan. Okay, he develops his bishop. I'm assuming he's trying to castle his king on the queen side. Not sure why. I guess the bishops are pointing towards his king, so he's not trying to chance that. All right, this knight isn't really that useful here anymore. Let's play knight to g6, I'm still trying to finish my development. Knight h4 is an idea. He castles his king on the queen side. So, okay, bishop e6 now I'm thinking of, but I'm still going to lose this pawn. So let's just continue to bring more pieces in the game. Rook to e8, pawn c4 hits the bishop. Now I'm just going to pull my bishop back. My king is completely safe. And now my plan is to play b6. Once I play b6, my whole idea is to start attacking his pawn chain, open up as much lines on his king, and then I'm going to start an attack on his king. So knight a4 was played. Still going to play pawn to b6, because if he takes, I takes, knight takes b3, and then rook to b1 should be good for us. If he plays queen takes, I mean, I'm ahead by a piece, so nothing is wrong with trading, but I should be able to keep the queens on the board and checkmate his king here. f3. Fair enough. He's actually helping me to open the position. Now I take, and eventually the b file will become open. He took with the pawn. Now I'm going to take on f3, so that way once I develop my bishop to f5, this diagonal is also going to be open. So once I start attacking his king is not going to be able to escape. Pawn takes was played. Let's develop the bishop. There's no e4 because I have so many pieces covering the e4 square. Guy still played e4. This guy. Oh, no, no, no. My pawn is pinned. I actually can't take. So now I have to pull the bishop back. The bishop is still pointing towards the queen though. But if he takes, I take and I should be fine. Now I'm confident that there's no e5 because the pawn is just going to take. But I want to hit him with rook to b8. Okay, he took with the pawn. Let's play bishop takes, hit the queen, so that way the rook also attacks this bishop. Bishop to c4 is a move, but then I'm going to play rook to b8 and attack his queen. He did find bishop to c4. Let's bring more pieces in the attack, hitting that queen, forcing the queen to move. He moves the queen out the way, and instead of taking his bishop, allowing his queen to take with check, let's just bring more pieces in the game. What I'm doing is I'm centralizing my knight and I'm attacking his bishop. Now, if his bishop takes my bishop, the other knight is also centralized, and I'm going to be gaining tempo on his queen. Mm. I don't think that move was good. I mean, it looks good because it's pinning my knight, but let's do some math here. The two bishops are 6 points. My rook is 5. If I use my knight and take his bishop, maybe he thinks he's going to win my rook, which he is, but then I'm going to take the bishop. I'm going to get 6. He's only going to get 5. So now I'm ahead by 2. I'm eventually going to be ahead by 3. So let's just get that bishop off the board. If he takes my rook, we play queen takes. My queen is also joining the attack with queen f4 next. He took the rook. Let's just take back. Now we're ahead by 3. There's Oh, then he sacrificed the rook. Maybe he thinks I'm gonna play knight takes, and then he plays queen takes. But no, bro, I'm just gonna play pawn takes. Now you sacrificed the rook for no reason, because now my knight is guarded. And now he plays b4. Now I'm just trying to finish him off. Queen to f4 checks the king. Once he moves the rook, my rook joins the attack. He moves the king. Now the rook joins the attack. The rook is now on the second rank. There's also queen f5 to bring more pieces in the attack. Okay, he's using his rook to defend. I could check here. Okay, let's be patient. Let's just be patient a bit. Let's just play g6. Once I get my bishop on this diagonal, it should be winning. Whenever you're attacking someone, it's very important that you attack with all your pieces. And if you're not seeing any immediate tactics, you want to look for ways to bring even more pieces in the game. So pawn b4 didn't do anything. Now all of a sudden my bishop is on a very nice diagonal. He's making random pawn moves. And anywhere I put this knight, his queen is going to be under attack. So how are we going to do this? Let's play knight e4. This is called a discovered attack, by the way. Moving my knight out the way, hitting the queen. Now he's forced to move the queen out the way. He puts the queen on b4. Here's what I'm seeing. First of all, the king doesn't really have a lot of squares. If I'm able to check him here, that could lead to a checkmate. I'm also trying to check here, and then the king is not able to move, and the king has to come up. But then I'm still not seeing the discovered check that I have. Maybe I could pull the bishop back. Yeah, let's pull the bishop back and hit the queen. And then once the queen moves, then we take on a3 with check. And then once the king moves over, then we should be able to grab the rook and checkmate his king. Unless he puts the queen somewhere where he is guarding his rook. So that could also be an idea. He pulls the queen back, which means the queen no longer guards. Well, the queen doesn't guard the rook. That's a fork, by the way, but we don't want his queen. Let's play the move knight takes a3 check. Now, I mean, he could sack his queen or he could move his king. The issue is his queen is the main defender of this rook. So the king, once he moves the king out the way, then we grab the rook. The queen is going to be forced to block, and then queen takes is going to be mate. He moves the queen. We grab the rook, check. Queen now has to block. And that's just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 700 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 700. Let's play some more Budapest Gambit. After c4, we play e5, and this is now the Budapest. Now, let's see how they're going to react to this. Is he going to take? Is he going to push? Is he going to accept? Is he going to decline? Okay, so this is a very interesting way to decline the gambit. He's just developing his bishop and pinning my knight. But I'm still going to take on d4 because what I'm doing is I'm forcing him to develop his queen a bit too early. Now, what I'm not going to do is immediately play knight to c6 because then if I play knight c6 now, he takes on f6 and I have to take with the pawn and I double up my pawns. And if I take with the queen, he's trading queens and I double up my pawns. Wait, if knight f6, bishop takes, take the queen, he takes the queen, I check. It's kind of weird. Let's just go bishop e7 first. I'm still going to play knight c6. He's still helping me to finish my development. And usually in these types of position, they always struggle to get their king out the center of the board. So let's see if that's going to happen here. Move 4, guys controlling the center of the board. Let's just develop though, developing the knight, hitting the queen. Now he has to move the queen out the way, and then I'm going to get my king out the center of the board. And let's see how quick it will be for him to get his king out the center of the board. Okay, he moves his queen to e3. Let's get the king out the center of the board. Everything is going to plan. This cannot be how you do it, bro. You should not have your king in the center of the board and trying to attack someone. That's not how you do it. Notice how every move that I'm playing, I'm trying to be productive. I'm trying to develop my pieces. He's already moving his queen so many times, and now he's playing e5. He's now losing because, okay, for one, I'm already attacking the pawn, but I like the idea of just playing knight g4, hit the queen, and now I have two pieces attacking e5. I also have two pieces attacking e3. And he needs to see that he needs to take on e7 first because, you know, he could be losing even his bishop if he's not careful. But it's guaranteed that he's going to be losing a pawn here. And that's what I would like about this gambit. Again, they don't know anything about this gambit. So even when they decline it, they're still going to find themselves in trouble. Okay, he moves his queen out the way. That's an interesting move. But here's what we're going to do. Because my knight is hanging, right? But I have the, wait. I'm thinking about checking him on b4 then taking the bishop. But if I check, he's able to block with the bishop. So what I'm going to do is I could take his bishop, he takes my knight, and then I take on e5 and I'm ahead by a pawn. I'm trying to find the best way to do it so that way I'm also able to expose this king. Maybe even pawn to d6 here, you know, not trying to be greedy, but just try to open the center of the board. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go pawn d6. Pawn d6 also guards my knight, and it keeps his bishop under attack. If he takes my oh wow bro, that's crazy. Because now my knight is guarded. Your bishop is under attack twice. He's also playing very quickly. He puts the knight on f3 thinking, I'm guarding my bishop, but I'm attacking your bishop twice, sir. This is called a battery. Two pieces on the same line, doing the same thing. That's just a free bishop. 9 moves in the Budapest Gambit. He's trading. Let's just take. Now we're ahead in material. I'm threatening this pawn. I'm threatening this check. His king is in the center. I told you guys he's going to have issues getting out the center of the board. Told you guys. Bishop e2 was played. Now it's too late. He wants the castle, but now it's too late. That's a free pawn, by the way, but we're going to check him on c1. Now he has to block with the bishop. But the thing is, once I take on b2, rook on a1 is going to be hanging. So we could say this is GG's. Let's just grab the pawn on b2. He's able to take our knight, but he's going to be losing his rook. And we're already ahead by 4 points. Okay, Queen c3 was played, and now we're seeing the cleanest example of the drawback principle. What is the drawback principle? Talk to your pieces. The queen was on g3. What was the queen doing on g3? It was guarding the pawn on f2, moving the queen up to c3. Yes, it guards the rook, but it no longer guards the pawn. And that's why that's just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 800 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 800. We're playing some more Budapest Gambit. C4, we play E5. Surprise them with the Budapest. And this is where they pause, because they have to think about it. They're not really sure how to respond to this. Do we take the free pawn? Is it a trap? Should I not take the free pawn? He didn't take the free pawn. Now, whenever they push past like this, I want you to put your bishop on the c5 square and then target their pawn on f2. Like, not try to immediately win the pawn on f2, but just point the bishop towards the pawn on f2 and just get your king out the center of the board. Notice how quickly our king is going to get castled, and they're still going to have to spend time to get their king out the center. So he's developing his knight. Let's just get our king out the center. And remember the drill. If your king is out the center and the opponent's king is in the center, our whole game plan is to open the center. And he already blundered. Now, if you're able to spot the blunders, then kudos to you. You have some potential. But I want you guys to notice how his bishop is an unprotected piece. I have a tactics book that I'm working on. These tactics will be in the book. Because the bishop is unprotected, what I'm trying to do is I'm about to set up a discovered attack. How am I going to do it? I'm going to start by using an attraction tactic. But remember, in order to find the best move in chess, you have to look on moves on the opponent's half of the board. These moves are usually your checks, your captures, and your threats. Bishop takes f2 check. No, I mean, he doesn't have to take, by the way. He could move the king, but I still win the pawn. You still lose the right to castle. But once the king takes, we play knight to g4. Now the knight checks the king, setting up the discovered attack. And once the king moves out the way, we grab the bishop. And just like that, 6 moves into the Budapest Gambit. He declines the Gambit, but he still fell into one of the traps. So he moves the king out of the way. Let's grab the bishop. And from here, it's just chess. He develops his knight, gaining some tempo on the queen, but let's not pull the queen back. Let's move the queen forward. Now we're really targeting his f2 square. I mean, queen to f2 check is a move, but he's just going to run with the king. So I'm more leaning towards knight f2 if he allows it. Maybe he's going to play something like queen to d3. If queen to d3, then I may check his king because we don't want to trade queens when we're attacking someone's king. But I also need to focus on the development of my other minor pieces. Like, can't win the game with just my queen and my knight, If I could get my rook in the game, maybe play d6, maybe even put my knight on the edge of the board and swing it back in the center of the board. Something like that could help. Okay, he did play queen to d2. Again, we don't want to trade. Let's check the king. The king is forced to move, by the way. And if I could magically just put my knight on f2, that would be a very nice fork. So I'm currently thinking about moving my queen out the way, but that's going to make it obvious. Now, checking him on e3 is the winning move because I'm attacking the bishop once, he's guarding it once. Knight e3 is a fork, and once I check on e3, the king is not able to go to c2 because the knight covers c2. So once I play knight e3 check, he has to play king c1, then we take the free bishop. And I'm also going to be attacking his queen, and eventually I should be able to just get back out with my knight and win the game. So knight e3 is, you could say it's GG's here. It's just game. He moves the king. That's a free knight. And I'm also attacking his queen. Where is he going to put the queen? Because I'm also thinking about checking him on e3. All right, he moves the queen. Fair enough. I guess he wants to play knight e4. But hey, guess what? I'm ahead by 4 points. No need to complicate the game. Like, queen takes g2 is a pawn, but there's rook to g1 because the knight guards it. Let's just get the queens off the board. Let's check the king. If he takes, we take. We're ahead by 4 points. We just want to trade. That's all we need to do once we're ahead in material. Now I'm hitting g2. Now I'm hitting c4. It's just a matter of development until I win this game. All right, he grab a free pawn, which is also protecting this pawn. But first I'm going to play d6. You could say this is removing the guard, but I'm also trying to develop my bishop. But I'm just hitting the knight. Once the knight move, I'll take this pawn, and then I'll finish my development. He moves the knight out the way. Let's grab the pawn. Maybe he's going to play b3, and I'm going to offer up some more trades. But he resigns. More Budapest Gambit against 900 level players. Stick around. Your opponent is now 900. More Budapest Gambit coming your way. On c4, now we play e5. This is the whole idea of the Budapest Gambit. We're gambiting a pawn so that way we get some nice development, setting up some nice traps. We took the pawn, very nice. Now we put the knight on g4, just trying to regain our pawn here. There's moves like knight to f3. There's moves like bishop to c4. Some persons just don't try to even regain the pawn. So knight to f3 was played, and let's try pawn to d6. Like, pawn to d6 can work at the lower level, but at the higher level, I recommend knight c6 because knight c6 is a more long-term attacking plan. Pawn to d6 is a more short-term attacking plan. Like when you play pawn to d6, there's easier ways in which you can trap them. For example, now he takes the pawn, we play bishop takes, and again, there's some very nice traps here. Knight to c3 is one way to just not get trapped. Pawn to h3 looks like the most natural move. I mean, the bishop and the knight points towards h2. The knight is on his half of the board. Why wouldn't he try to get the knight out of his half of the board? He plays pawn to e3 instead, though, so may not work. Like, if I sack my knight and then king takes and I check here, he's able to play king to e2. So that idea doesn't work anymore. Okay, let's just continue to develop normally then. Let's just focus on our development. At least we have 3 pieces developed. He only has one. H3 now would be a good move, but then I'll just pull my knight back. I'm also trying to play some queen f6 moves. If he plays bishop e2 trying to castle, then I could also try to set up some fishing pole traps. So knight c3 was played. He's just trying to finish his development. Knight d5 is also an idea. Let's just get our king out the center of the board. It's very important that I castle, especially since I'm down by a pawn. I want to use my lead in development in a very productive way. So bishop e2 was played. Um, Bishop to f5 can't be bad. I mean, I'm just developing my pieces, but maybe he's going to be able to play pawn to e4. I also like the idea of queen f6 followed by queen h6. I think he's going to play h3 eventually, though. Still trying to see if I'm able to sack the knight, but can't. So let's just focus on our development for now. Okay, that's not a bad move. Like, I think he understands that I'm trying to attack him. He gave me a free pawn, but I think in his defense, he's just giving back the pawn. And what he's doing is he's giving back the pawn so that way he's able to trade the queens off the board. It gives black a slight advantage though, but at least he's not going to be getting attacked, you know? Now I have to bring him to the end game and win that way. So he trades the queen. Let's just take with the rook. All my pieces are going to be very active from here, and his king is going to be safely castled. Okay, king is safely castled. How do we make progress from here? I'm not necessarily seeing any possible ways in which I can attack him. So what do? I need to ensure that I improve the activity of the rest of my pieces. My knight on g4, he will eventually play h3. So let's just pull the knight back to e5. I'm also trying to make it hard for him to develop his bishop. For example, now if he develops his bishop, he's going to lose it. So now we're just trading. Bishop to b2 is not possible. The guy played 4. So he's also being very aggressive. How do we do this? I'm thinking about knight f5. I'm thinking about knight g4. I'm just trying to target this pawn on e4, but the moment he plays f5, I may find myself in trouble. For example, if I put my knight here and he pushes the pawn, putting my bishop here, he gets removing the guard tactic. So instead of putting my knight on these squares and then force my bishop to be overworked, I'm just going to put my knight on the d3 square. I'm attacking his bishop. The bishop is also the main defender of the pawn on e3. And if he takes, he's giving me the bishop here. So this is not a bad move. In fact, if he plays f5 now, he could be losing material. Okay, he gave up the bishop for the knight. Let's just take. Now we have two pieces attacking e3. He has one piece guarding e3. Like, I know exactly the mindset that he's going into this game with. I think he feels as if he trades all the pieces off the board, it's going to increase his chances of drawing or maybe even winning the game. But now I have two attackers. He only has one defender. Am I able to take the pawn on h3 with check? And then if the bishop takes, I take and I'm ahead by a pawn. At that point, he's able to play king to f2 and my rook seems to be trapped. So let's just go rook to d1, bring more pieces in the game. I mean, again, based on how this guy's playing, I think he just wants to trade the pieces off the board. Like after takes, he's trading, but all my pieces are active. All his pieces are passive. And we could say black has an advantage here. Yup, he's trading. Now he takes king to f2. I'm expecting. I mean, I have two attackers. He has one defenders. King f2 is the only way in which he could add defenders to the pawn. The thing is, he's gonna have issues finishing his development. Bishop is not able to go to d2, and if he plays b3, he loses the knight. Instead, he plays king to h1. He's content with losing the pawn on e3. Hey, I mean, if you want to give me a pawn, I'll take it. Because wait, or should I play bishop to b5? Isn't this a more forcing move? Hit the knight, threatens the back rank. If I hit the knight, he has to push a pawn on the side that his king is on, and I could take the knight this way, which brings the game into opposite colored bishop, so I'm not going to do that. So hit the knight, he plays h3, and he's completely safe. Let's just take the free pawn. Like, this should still be winning. Okay, now we take. I'm expecting rook to d1, getting his rook on the file, threatening some back rank ideas, but I'm just going to play g6. I mean, we're also at the stage in the game where it's important for us to push one of these pawns in front of the king. We call it creating loft for the king. But instead, he plays knight to. Well, this move could actually get him trapped. He has to be careful. Guy has to be very careful. He thinks he's forking both of my pawns. But once I play a move like pawn c6, I hit the knight. If he takes on a7, then his knight is trapped. Maybe I shouldn't try to win the knight though. I'm going to try something like rook e2, get my rook on his second rank, put the bishop on d5, try to win this pawn. Ooh, he blundered his knight. That's just a free knight, bro. Okay, guys, he blundered his knight. Let's just take the knight. That was a trick. Obviously, we can't take the knight because the back rank is weak. I'm thinking of playing bishop to d5 though, but then he's able to change his mind from taking the pawn and pull the knight back to c3. So let's just play pawn to g6. If he check, I move the king and his knight and his back rank is gonna be weak. It's advised that he pulls the knight back to c3. He didn't pull the knight back to c3 though, so now he's in trouble. Like, I'm going to start with rook to e2 because it's very important that we put our rook on the opponent's 7th or second rank. And my plan is not only to take the pawn, but I'm also trying to play bishop d5 and win this pawn. Now, all his pawns are hanging, and this endgame is completely winning for black. H3 was played. He's trying to create some escape for the king. Let's continue with the plan. Remember, the threat is better than the execution, guys. So even though I was able to take the pawn, now I'm threatening two pawns. If he plays rook to g1, then I take the pawn. And then, okay, the knight is not really trapped anymore. There's knight c8, but then this pawn is going to be hanging. I'm going to have two connected pass pawns rolling up the board, and it's just a matter of time until I win the game. So he moves the pawn forward, which means if I take with the rook, by the way, he's going to take my bishop and I'm going to lose the game. So what I'm thinking of is to take this pawn, hit the knight, and then once the pawn move, I take the other pawn with check. And then once the king move, I take a third pawn, and that should be winning the game. So let's take this pawn, hit the knight, only square for the knight is c8, by the way. Now this pawn is hanging. I'm going to take with check. He's not going to be able to put the king on the same line as my rook. So, okay, never mind. He decided to not move the knight. I guess he thought the knight was trapped, but now we win the knight, which means we're winning the game. He moves the pawn again. We're putting the rook back on a2 because we're still trying to take this pawn. I'm not going to take because if I take, I lose my bishop. He's trying to use that removing the guard tactic on me. Once he takes, I'm just going to take back. He moves the rook. Now we're able to take with the rook. And it's now very tricky because my bishop is on the same line as his king. That's just a check, by the way. We're going to be able to do a discovered attack on the next move, regardless of where he plays. I think he has to try to hide his rook behind my bishop. Otherwise, I'm just going to do a discovered attack and win his rook. This is just one. He moves the pawn, and this is where the game ends. This is called a discovered attack, by the way, guys. One of the tactics that will be in my upcoming book. The bishop and the king is on the same line. All I need to do is move my rook out the way with check, which means my bishop checks the king. His king is now forced to move. We take the rook, and he resigns. Your opponent is now 1,000. More Budapest Gambit coming your way. After c4, we play e5. Is he going to accept? Is he going to decline? What will he do? He declined the gambit. Instead, he develops this knight. But now we're able to take on d4. And then once his queen takes, what are we going to do? Develop our knight. Gain tempo on his queen. And now he puts his queen back on d1. And now I play bishop to c5. Look on the position. We're playing with the black pieces, but black has more developed than white. And we are only 5 moves into the Budapest. Okay, he's developing his knight. Let's just get the king out the center of the board. Bishop to g5 is definitely an annoying move. But instead he plays e3, which is blocking out his bishop out of the game. Let's just continue with our development though. Pawn to d6. He plays bishop to e2. I mean, he's playing a very principled game. You know, he's trying to develop all his pieces. He's trying to get all his pieces in the game. Let's play rook to e8. Let's put the rook on the same line as the king. And I am expecting him to castle. So now that his king is castled, now I'm looking to start the attack. I'm going to start with bishop to g4, applying some pressure to the knight. I knew he was going to play h3. Bishop to h4 is fine, but let's just pull the bishop back to f5 because there's definitely some ideas where I'm able to sack the bishop. Now let's look on the opponent's last move. He just played a3. What do we think his plan is? What do we think he wants to do? He wants to play b4. This is called prophylactic thinking. Seeing the opponent's last move and trying to see what they're trying to do and then prevent them from doing it. So pawn to a5 prevents him from playing pawn to b4. And then I'm going to continue with my plan of playing queen d7. Now he plays knight d5. The thing is, to take is a mistake. If I takes, I'm only going to help him to attack my knight. So instead of taking the knight, I'm going to play the move knight e4, centralizing my knight. I'm still trying to play queen d7 and sacrifice on h6. There's also some crazy rook e3 to h6 ideas, which will make the sacrifice even more deadly. So guy has to be careful here. Bishop to d3. He's trying to get some pieces off the board. I do not blame him. Let's just go queen to d7 here. We're connecting our rooks. We're preparing the sack. And I say this a lot. Like to say it again. This is how you know that you're out of the opening. Your king and your rooks should be the only pieces on the background. If there's still more pieces on the background, you're still in the opening. And that's the reason why you're not seeing tactics in your games, because you're still in the openings. You're looking for tactics when you should be focusing on your development. Now, if you want the full Budapest theory, it will be available on the members section. Knight f4 was played. I think he sees the sack and he doesn't want to allow it, so he plays knight f4. Makes some sense. It's also preventing rook to e6, so it's also a bit annoying. Pawn to g5 is a bit too reckless. Knight e5 hits the bishop. Knight e5, if he takes, I could play pawn takes, hit the knight. And then once the knight goes back to e5, then I take, but then my bishop is going to be hanging. So let's not try to rush and win this game. Let's just play the move pawn to a4 here, really preventing him from pushing his a pawn. And there are some very nice. Okay, this is now getting very suspicious, very suspicious. His bishop on d3 is not unprotected because the knight is protecting it. What happens if I chase away? Nah, that's too reckless. That's too reckless. I wanted to chase away the knight and then sacrifice on f2. If I sacrifice on f2, now the bishop is guarded. Maybe now is a good time to play knight e5. And if he takes, I take it, the knight. And then once the knight takes, we get the tactics. So let's go ahead and play knight e5. Hits the bishop, hits the knight. Is he going to trade? Who knows? Okay, he did trade. But what he did was to give up the bishop for the knight. Let's just take. Now we have the bishop here. If he takes, I play pawn takes, and I'm still attacking his knight. Yeah, why is he just... These are just random trades, bro. Guys, whenever you're going to make a trade, do you ask yourself, who will this trade benefit? Or do you think, okay, it's just 3 for 3? Like, look at the move that the guy just played. Bro, I clearly just attack your knight, buddy. You're not going to move the knight? He didn't move the knight. You're representing Nigeria, fam. Okay, first of all, my queen is unprotected, my bishop is unprotected, so we still have to be careful. If I take the knight, I lose my queen. So now we just need to play a series of in-between move and we're going to win the game. We're about to be ahead by a knight, by the way, so let's first trade the queens off the board, right? And then once he takes the queen, we're about to be ahead by a knight, but if I take his knight, he takes my bishop. So we need to trade the bishop off the board. And then once he takes the bishop, we simply take the knight. And just like that, we're completely winning. He plays f3. Do I even need to move my bishop? Can't I just take that free pawn, seeing that the rooks are adjacent to each other? And if he takes my bishop, I just hit him with e2, and that's a fork? Can't I do that? He saw that I could do that, and then he played rook to e1. But now I'm able to trap this guy's rook. Now I'm able to play bishop to d3. I'm already ahead by 4 points. This rook has nowhere to go, and I'm attacking the rook. If he puts the rook here, I'm just going to take. Yeah, this is GG's, bro. He moves the pawn forward. Let's just take the free rook. And at this point, we're just ahead by a whole entire rook. Let's just swing the other rook in the game. The plan is to push the pawn, move the rook to d1, and yeah, this is just game, bro. He moves the king. We push the pawn. Once the rook move, now we're trying to queen the pawn, so we're trying to get rid of this rook. So usually they put the rook behind the pawn, and then we play moves like rook to d1. He's now forced to take the rook, otherwise I take his rook. Either way, I'm going to have a queen on the board, and he's just going to be getting checkmated, which is why he resigns. More Budapest Gambit against 1100 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1100. More Budapest Gambit coming your way. Play c4. Now we play e5. Now let's see how they're going to react here. Will they accept the gambit? Will he decline the gambit? Who knows? Okay, he declines the gambit and he also decides to play this weird knight to f3 move. So whenever they decline the gambit like this, what I like to do is instead of taking and helping to centralize his knight, I play e4 and attack the knight, forcing the opponent to move the same piece more than once in the opening. And then once the knight move, we play e3. And yes, I'm sacrificing the pawn, but I'm exposing his king on this diagonal, so he has to be careful. And he's also going to have some issues developing his pieces. Now from here, I'm going to play d5, controlling the center. He also plays c5, so it's going to be a bit harder for him to even play e4. From here, I like the idea of playing knight g4, hitting the unprotected pawn. But that doesn't really do too much. Let's just play b6 and then take the pawn. If he takes, I play pawn takes, and I have a very nice position. Otherwise, if he plays b4, then I play a5. He plays queen c2. He's guarding the pawn with the queen. That should not be good, bro. Because now his pawn on c5 becomes a target. So now we take on c5. Once he takes back, I'm attacking. He's defending. And remember, we are down by a pawn, but we intentionally sacrifice this pawn. Now what I'm going to do is, okay, it's a bit tricky. Knight a6, there's queen check, right? And I'm not able to block. And if knight d7, maybe he's going to push. Let's not worry too much about winning that pawn. I think it's best if we get our king out the center of the board first. Because I'm sure he's going to have issues finding somewhere safe for his king. Notice what he's doing? He's trying to ensure that I don't win the pawn. But it's not easy for him to hold on to the pawn. For example, now I'm going to play knight a6. Now we have two pieces attacking the pawn. He only has one piece guarding the pawn. Based on how he's playing, I think he wants to hold on to his pawn, which is what he did. Okay, now we're just going to continue with the attack. Knight b4 hits the queen, hits the pawn. That's a fork, by the way, guys. Like, the pawn on c6 is confirmed dead. I'm not even trying to win that pawn anymore. Like, once he moves the queen, I am thinking about bishop f5. But if I play bishop f5 trying to fork, there's knight d4. So that doesn't seem to work. So let's just take the pawn on c6. Now the position is equal, and he's just going to have issues finishing his development. Now I'm trying to play some very fancy moves, like bishop to b4, pin the knight, knight e4, apply pressure to the pin knight, swing the queen into h4 and start an attack. And the guy's king is in the center of the board. Okay, he's trying to trade. We don't want, well, if I take c plays pawn takes, that is good for him. So instead of taking the knight, let's develop our bishop. And then if he takes our knight, we're able to take back the knight. Because remember, to take is a mistake. We only want to trade if it improves our position. And that's what he's doing. Now all our pieces are on very good scores. His king is still in the center. He still has two pieces not yet developed. Queen to d4 is not too bad though, because my plan was to play bishop to b4. But now my plan is to play pawn c5. My bishop is in the way, so let's just pull the bishop back, and then I'm going to kick him with pawn to c5. So he develops the bishop. Let's kick away that queen. I'm assuming he's going to try to castle on the queen side, but the queen side should not be safe. I'm not going to make it easy for him to castle, by the way. But even if he does castle, it's not safe for him on the queen side. Yeah, he has a lot of development issues here. D4 will be my next move. He's also putting his queen on the same diagonal as my bishop. Already I'm thinking about knight e4, and then once the queen move, we grab this bishop. But we want more from that discovered attack. Let's play d4. Remember, guys, the threat is better than the execution. Just the threat of having this discovered attack is good enough. We want a position where once the discovered attack happens, we really get something for it. So let's see what he's going to do with his knight. Okay, he pulls the knight all the way back to d1, which means castling is not even going to happen. Let's now take the discovered attack, and he is forced to move his queen. I'm thinking about just taking the bishop, swinging the queen over to a5. Black is completely winning, by the way, guys. Like, my king is safe. I'm not down in any material. His king is not safe. He's not down in any material, but his development is just not good. Okay, he moves the queen out the way. I have a check on his king, which is it's a very nice move, by the way. Ooh, that's a nice move. Ah, that's a nice move. Try to calculate my whole idea with bishop h4. I'm about to tell it to you guys. Once I hit him with bishop h4, blocking with the knight loses the knight, so he has to block with the pawn. Once he blocks with the pawn, he opens the diagonal pointing towards my bishop. Then I hit him with a discovered attack. If he takes my knight, I take his rook, and then we're going to be ahead in material. So bishop to h4, this is me setting up a discovered attack. These are the types of tactics that I'm planning on putting in my upcoming book. And remember, if you're trying to be featured in my book, just send your tactics to tactics.chesswithakeem@gmail.com. Ooh, he took with the king. Look at this. I can always take this free rook, by the way. But now you guys are about to learn in between move. I could take the free rook, but he's going to take my bishop. Still good for us. But what if we're able to pull the bishop back with check, saving the bishop, and then we take the free rook? Now we're just going to get an entire 5 points. Okay, he moves the king out the way. Let's grab the free rook, and now it's just over. Okay, he's attacking my bishop. I am forced to move. Let's just go bishop e3. Would love for him to trade, but I'm also trying to cut off any escape square for his king, so that way once I hit him with queen a5, it leads to a checkmate, or he at least has to sacrifice a knight. Okay, he's trading. Let's just take back. That's fine. We want to trade anyways. Then he plays rook to d1. Now, this is not winning, by the way, but he has to be careful because the king is not able to move, and I am going to play queen to a5. The only move that he has that doesn't lose the game is pawn b4, and he found it. But I was also attacking his unprotected pawn. So let's just grab the unprotected pawn. We're currently ahead by 6 points. The goal from here is to try to get the rooks off the board, trade the rooks, and this rook is actually the only piece that is preventing his king from getting mated. So once I'm able to trade off the rook, then I'm going to be able to checkmate his king. He moves his queen. He's attacking my bishop. I do not care. I'm just trying to trade the rooks off the board because I know once I trade the rooks off the board, he's going to be getting checkmated, which is why he resigns. More Budapest Gambit against 1200 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1200. Let's play some more aggressive Budapest Gambit. C4, we play e5. Nobody really knows how to react to this. I mean, a lot of persons are going to play d5 and decline the gambit. But now we're able to play the move bishop to c5, and already we're targeting their pawn on f2. Doesn't mean we're going to be winning the pawn though, but my plan from here is to get my king out the center of the board as quickly as possible, and then try to keep white's king in the center. So after a move like knight c3, I'm just going to get my king out the center of the board. Bishop to e3 was played. What a weird place to put the bishop. Because now I'm just gonna take the bishop. And once I take the bishop, bro, you have double pawns. Like these double pawns are not double pawns to be proud of. Because now it's gonna be so hard for him to develop his pieces. And to make it even more harder for him, to be even more annoying, first of all, moving the e pawn is hard, and he's gonna have issues developing his bishop. Now I'm gonna play e4. Now how is he gonna be developing his knight? Still gonna have issues. Queen to d2. I guess he's trying to castle on the queen side. Okay. I need to just finish my development though. Let's just finish my development. Let's just play pawn to d6. You know, maybe rook to e8 because my pawn on e4 could be under some pressure. He got his king out the center of the board. Let's go knight d7. I want to be able to play moves like knight e5 attack c4, or knight c5 knight b3 in some lines, or knight b6 to attack c4. All depends on what he does. Let's see what he does. Okay, he plays g4. Very interesting move, because if I take on g4 with my knight no longer guards e4, and then his knight takes on e4. He's also threatening to move my knight from guarding e4. So that's definitely an interesting move. But it's fine. Let's just take. It's a bit risky though, because I'm opening up the g file, but I noticed that there's forks that could happen, and his pawn on e3 is weak. So once his knight takes, I'm thinking of just playing rook to e8, hit the knight, or even queen e6. Come on, bro. Pawn h3? You really attacked my knight? You really played g4 just for my knight to take? Then he plays h3? That's a fart, bro. Now I'm also guarding the pawn on e4. That's game. Bishop to g2? I guess he's trying to win my pawn on e4. I'm not going to give him the pawn on e4. I'm not going to give him anything. He has two attackers on my pawn. Knight c5 adds some defenders. Maybe he wants to go b4 though. So maybe I should play queen e7. Yeah, let's do it that way. Queen e7 adds defense to the pawn. Now he plays queen d4. He's really trying to take the pawn. He has one, two, three pieces on my pawn. I only have two pieces. Let's just take the rook first. Let's take the rook first. So that way, eventually I could play f5 and just not give him the pawn. Because not giving him this pawn is not necessarily just being greedy. It's also preventing him from developing his knight to f3, which makes it even way more annoying for him. Okay, he puts the knight here, attacking my unprotected pawn. I'm going to move my knight and attack his unprotected pawn. Eventually, I'm going to be able to play a6 and chase that knight out of my half of the board. We're also ahead by 3 points here, so we're just in cruise mode. Pawn to h4 is not a bad move, because I wanted to play queen to g5. But let's just take the free pawn. I'm also now attacking this unprotected pawn. There's, my God, he finally gets to develop his knight, but now he's down by 4 points. And now I'm able to take another pawn. So now he's down by 5 points. And I'm forking both the queen and the bishop. So he has to move the queen out of the way. We're going to grab the bishop, which is not winning the bishop. It's going to be a trade, but it's still good for us. And then I'm going to go bishop d7 and attack his unprotected knight. Yeah, this is just game. Then he resigns. More Budapest Gambit against 1,300 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1,300. Let's play some more Budapest Gambit. After c4, we play e5. And anything, well, not anything they play. If they take the pawn, we play knight g4. If they play d5, we play bishop c5. If they play knight f3, we play e4. So he took the pawn. Let's go knight g4. The plan is just to take the pawn back, by the way. Knight f3, now we go knight c6. Whole idea is to take back the pawn. Some persons try to go bishop to f4 and hold on to the pawn. Once they do this, I like to just throw in the check, and then once they block the check, we go queen e7 and take back the pawn. That's what this guy's doing. Let's go bishop to b4, throwing the check. Knight goes to d2. Now we go queen to e7. And now it's just a very nice scenario. There's some traps that we're also going to try to set up here, by the way. For example, there's this move a3, which could lose the game. And I'm just going to take on e5 without even moving the bishop. Because if he dares to touch my bishop, he's going to be getting checkmate on d3. The best thing to do in this position is just to trade everything off the board until eventually he's going to be able to take the bishop. And once it reaches a point where he's going to be able to take the bishop and we're not going to be able to checkmate him, then we have to take on d2. So he took on e5. Let's just take on e5. Same thing. If he takes the bishop, he's still going to be getting checkmated on d3. So usually they take on e5. That's when we take on d2. And then it's just going to be a normal position. So he took on, if I take on e5 now, I lose the bishop. So I have to take on d2 with check, then take on e5. Now, if you're playing with the black pieces and you're able to get a position like this, you really cannot complain because you're black, you know? And, you know, you were meant to not be equal in terms of chess. So once you go pawn to e3 here, let's just get the king out the center of the board. And then from here, we're just going to try to finish our development. It's going to be a very tricky type of game, especially since he plays this queen to d4 move. Based on how this guy's playing, he's just trying to get the queens off the board and trying to play an endgame, which is something that I do not mind. But I mean, I could try to play it a bit more ambitious. Because what's going to be my plan if I trade the queens, check the king goes here? I'm not really seeing my plan. If I check, he's going to block though. So let's just pull the queen back to e7 for now, and then just develop the pieces normally. Okay, he develops his bishop. Sure, he wants to play queen to e4 and then try to trade the queens off the board. So let's just go rook to e8, get the rook on the file, preventing queen e4, and then continue with development. All right, after he castles, I'm going to go with a5 because the whole idea that we spoke about with rook to a6 followed by rook to h6 could be an idea. And it's a very fancy way to get the rook very actively in the game. So rook e1, we hit him with rook a6. Very nice rook lift ideas. Like the rook could be active on all these squares. And he quickly played pawn to c5. Let's just swing the rook over to h6. The pawn c5 is not a bad move, by the way, because, you know, I should have some issues developing my light squared bishop now. But once I play d6 and he takes, I should also be able to play rook takes d6 and attack his queen. So I'm fine in any scenario. h3 was played. He's anticipating my attack. Okay, we have to finish development here. I'm thinking b6 instead of d6. d6 he takes, I go here, he moves the queen. b6, however, I like because after the takes, rook takes, I apply pressure to his b2 pawn. Well, I mean, maybe I need to play d6 because it's not like I want to play d6 and then my rook is not. I want my rook to be able to easily roam on the d file. So maybe d6 would have been good, but it's fine. Let's just take and apply pressure to b2 this way. He also did not take, which, you know, that's not too bad. Now let's take on c5 and then play. Is he going to play queen takes? I knew he was going to play queen takes. I knew it. Since he wants endgame technique, I'll show him endgame technique. He takes the pawn, and based on what I'm seeing, his pawn on c5 is overexerted. So let's just start targeting the pawns. Remember what we said about the endgame, guys. In the endgame, it's very important that we attack weak pawns, and him having a pawn on the c5 square cannot be too good. The only way for him to guard the pawn is rook c1, but now once I hit him with rook to e5, I now have two pieces attacking that pawn. How is he gonna add additional support to that pawn? And it's so funny how I literally developed all my pieces around my light squared bishop, and 21 moves in the game and my light squared bishop is not in the game. But we could be winning a pawn. It's a bit tricky though. It's definitely a bit tricky. Rook to b1, and then if I take, he's able to pin because I didn't develop. So it's definitely a bit tricky if he plays rook to b1. Actually, if he plays rook to b1, I actually just can't take that pawn. Yeah, I could lose the game with rook to b1. Yeah, we have to be very careful now. Okay, that's a very nice move. Very, very nice move. How do I even do this? I was thinking about bishop a6 the whole time. But then after the trade, I'm going to get checkmated on the back rank because my back rank is weak. Maybe I need to create some loft for my king or something. Let's just pull the rook back. It didn't work. It didn't work. Let's just pull the rook back. I'm not confident in this endgame, by the way. I'm really not confident in this endgame. Like, if I wasn't able to win the pawn on c5, this rook to b1 move, because of my weak back rank, really gave him a good position. Now my pawns are under attack. The good thing is he puts his rook and the bishop on the same line. So temporarily I'm able to go bishop a6 and I will not lose the pawn because the rook has to go back. So that's good news for me. By the way, maybe he should have tried to pull the rook to b8. But no, I'm just gonna take the bishop. Still not winning for me. I think this endgame is drawn, but you know me. I'm gonna try to squeeze something out of this. Pawn to d6 is already applying some pressure to the pawn. He's not able to take, but rook to c3 is a very strong move. Okay, rook to c3 is very strong. If he plays rook to c3, then I'm probably forced to play d5. It's actually crazy, this endgame. I'm just not sure if I'm winning or I'm losing. So move the rook out the way, protect my pawn. After he trades, maybe rook here. Yo, I think this is drawn. Pawn push, he attacks the pawn. Guard the pawn. He attacks the pawn, I push. Let's try pawn push. Let's try pawn push. I need to get my king in the game very quickly, though. If he plays rook here, then I have to guard the pawn. But then I'm trying to get my king in the game to guard the pawn. Right now, my king is not doing anything. He takes the pawn. We have to guard it. Pawn to e4, we're going to push because he's trying to apply pressure to my pawn. Rook to c4, I shouldn't be afraid of. I'm just going to get the king in the game. And then it's going to be a trade, but it's going to be so close to a draw. So close to a draw. Wait, what? Why would he move this rook away? Oh, he wants to take the pawn. So if I take this pawn, he's going to take this pawn, and I'm not going to be able to take because my back rank is weak. And that's why I need to ensure that I get my king active. Now I could try to take the pawn, but rook to b5 is very strong. He attacks my pawn and protects his pawn at the same time. Wow. Okay, let's just move the pawn forward. If rook back I take, and if he puts the rook here, then the moment he takes, I take, but then he's going to take here. Oh my God. Feel as if I'm getting outplayed. Okay, let's go king up. If he takes, I take. How am I going to win a game being down by a pawn? Yo, I'm just down by a pawn here. What to do? Okay, we can't trade. Let's get the rook out the way. And I'm going to try to get my rook behind this pass pawn. I have a pass pawn, by the way. He checks. Let's just go king up. Everything is fine. My rook is guarded. Maybe f4 followed by f5 is a plan. Okay, he's trying to trade. That's definitely the right thing to do. How to do this now? How to do this? Okay, I'm gonna waste a few moves just to see what he's trying to do. Let's see if he's trying to draw the game, being ahead by a pawn. So for example, if he puts the rook here and then I go here and then he puts the rook there, then he's trying to draw. But let's just see first. Rook to c2, then he goes back. Rook to c3, then he goes here. Then that would give me the indication that he's trying to draw the game. And then I'm gonna have to use a different game plan. Okay, now we know that he's not trying to draw. Rook to b4 was played. Very strong move, by the way. All right, I don't want to trade, but I think I have to. Let's try rook to a. Rook to a8 should be something. Trying to get my rooks behind the pawn, targeting his pawn. That's just going to be a draw, dude. That's the thing. His time is running out, so time is definitely going to be a factor here. Okay, he's getting his rook on my 7th rank. Good thing is my rook is guarding it, so just need to find a creative way to get my other rook in the game. Let's try rook a4 hits this pawn. f3 I'm expecting. I have a little plan. Rook c4, then get behind, and then the plan is to get both of my rooks on the 2nd rank. If I'm able to get both of my rooks on the 2nd rank, then I could try to win the game. My king is definitely more active than his, so I know I'm not losing. And now he's getting his rooks in very passive positions. Now I'm guarding my c7 pawn. The plan is to get behind his a pawn and then get both rooks on the 2nd rank. His rooks are also not coordinated, so like my position here, or my chances. I like my chances. F4 was played. If he checked, then I go king up. I'm not afraid of that. Let's just continue with the plan. Once both of the rook goes to the 2nd rank, then we will be in the driver's seat. If f4 king up followed by king f4, and black will win the game. If he plays f5, which is what he just did, black will win the game. King to e5. If he checks, we go king to f4. And this is why I say, guys, endgame technique is so important. And if you guys watch the games that I play against the stronger guys, since I got my ELO to 2500, it's just so hard to make progress because those guys, I'm able to play well in the opening. I'm able to play well in the middle game. The end game is just drawn. They're not accepting a draw. They're just playing until I make the slightest mistake in the end game, and then I lose the game. And that's how a lot of persons are winning their games. That's how Magnus wins his games. So if you want to get good at the end game, I have a course from 500 to 2000 on my Patreon. The course is not for sale, by the way. Once you have access to my Patreon, you'll get everything for free. So you just need to access the Patreon, and then you'll get everything for free. Yeah, now he's in a bit of a trouble. Rook f3 is an idea. I mean, I'm gonna take it. It kind of opens the position a bit though. I don't necessarily want to open the position so much, but luckily he has nothing. I mean, if I take there's rook b4 and that trade is enough for him to draw, but now he's thinking a lot. He's not thinking a lot. Whoa, he pulls the rook all the way back. He doesn't want to lose this pawn. Maybe he thinks I want to take. No, bro. Two rooks on the second should be a winning advantage. Wait, rook here, he checks. Then I go king back, he push. Wait, it's very tricky though. Rook here, he checks. I go king up, he checks. I go king back, he checks, and then I go king back. And if he checks, I take the pawn. So rook to c2 is still winning. I just need to be very concrete about it. And this is why activity is so important. My rooks are exactly where they need to be, and my king is as active as it can possibly be. Mm. So he checks. Oh, wait, I didn't see rook check. Do not get checkmated here. If I go here, rook check, I go here. Does he have any more checks? No. If he checks, I take. If he check, I take, and I'm fine. So I didn't see the check, but it is still fine. Now now I'm threatening mate. So he checks. King back is forced. He could check here, but once I play king g5, I'm attacking his rook. Yes, he could check here, but then I go here, and then he's not able to check. Oh no. Okay, guys, this is called a blind swine checkmate. This is just a pattern that I know. Because, yeah, this is just checkmating what? Three moves? Checking over, mate. Hopefully, you guys found that, by the way. I'm going to be adding all sorts of checkmating theories in my book. But he lost the game. He played very well, though. That's just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 1400 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1400. More Budapest Gambit coming your way. C4, we play E5. What will we see? He accepts the gambit. Knight G4 hits the pawn. And some persons play H3. Like Knight F3 is one of the ways to do it. If you want to try to trap someone, you can play D6, but Knight to C6 is the more mature way to do things. Bishop to F4. Again, the guy's trying to hold on to his pawns. Whenever they put the bishop on F4, I like to just play bishop to B4 check. Now, it doesn't really matter too much if you put the bishop on C5 or put the bishop on B4. I personally prefer bishop B4 when they try to hold on to the pawn. And the whole idea of, wait, I can't sack anything here, right? Nah. The whole idea of doing this is so that way now we're able to play queen to e7 and we should be able to easily win back the pawn. The good thing is if they play a3, we don't necessarily have to give up the bishop for the knight before we take the pawn. We could actually pull the bishop back to c5 and, you know, play a5 to prevent b4. The pawn on e5 is not running away, so we can always take the pawn whenever we want. Oh, by the way, guys, there's another trap here. Let's say he plays h3, and then I play knight takes, and then I play knight takes e5. If he takes my knight, knight d3 is also a checkmate. So there's some very cool traps that could happen in this line. And by the way, I will be dropping the full Budapest Gambit theory on my Patreon. So the link is in the description. Or if you want to watch it on the channel memberships, I will publish it there as well. So he plays a3. If I takes, there's knight takes. And then if I takes, there's bishop takes. At that point, I'm going to be forced to take, and then he's going to play queen takes, and then I'm going to take. And then, okay, the position is going to be a bit dry, to be honest. Bishop back to c5 is a move. Bishop c5, there's pawn e3. Then I take. The whole idea of pawn to b4 is annoying, though. So after bishop to c5, pawn e3, I have to play a5 to prevent b4. And then maybe after he plays h3, then I take. I'm contemplating between bishop c5 and knight takes e5. Bishop c5. Bishop c5, there's e3. Let's just play knight takes e5. It's a trap. I'm trying to set up a trap. If he takes the bishop, it's going to be a very funny checkmate. He's going to get checkmated in what? 8 moves. That would be crazy. But I'm not assuming he's going to fall for that. The guy's 1400. He needs to just take on e5 first. Like, take on e5 with all his pieces. Oh, he took the free bishop. Mr. 1400 took the free bishop. And this, my fellow viewers, is just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 1500 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1500. Let's play some more Budapest Gambit. So c4, we go e5. That's the whole idea. If they accept the gambit, we hit them with knight g4. If we see something like d5, then the bishop is always good on c5. We're seeing someone accepting the gambit, so it's going to be a very fun game. h3. That's actually a move that I haven't seen a lot. I guess he just wants me to take back the pawn, and then we're just going to develop the pieces normally. h3 happens, but immediate h3 shouldn't work, shouldn't be too good. Now e4 is played. I guess eventually he wants to play f4 and be like, yo, I'm chasing your knight all about the place, you know? That could be an idea. Let's just keep developing our pieces. All right, so he develops the knight to c3. Let's just keep developing, putting the bishop on the traditional square, applying some pressure to f2. The plan is to get the king out the center as quickly as possible. And then we're just going to go d6, bishop e6. Like, it's just the most normal development. And the good thing is, I'm sure this is something that white is not familiar with. All right, he played queen e2. Weird looking move. I'm not sure why he would want to block his bishop like that. He's also allowing me to easily play knight to d4 and attack his queen. Guy's being very suspicious. Why can't I just hit the queen? Force the queen to go back. It doesn't really do me too much good, to be honest. Maybe he wants to play bishop e3, but if he plays bishop e3, maybe that's when I'm gonna go knight to d4. Let's just get the king out the center of the board. He's playing a lot of weird move, guys. h3 was already slightly weird, but queen e2 is definitely weird. He could find himself in trouble very soon. Okay, bishop e3. I'm assuming he wants to get his king castled as quickly as possible. The thing is, though, if I take that bishop, he takes with the queen and he has a very nice position. So what I'm going to do is, instead of taking the queen, okay, I'm not sure. Knight d4 is what I'm thinking of. But if knight d4, he goes back to d1, and my knight is going to be under attack, though. That's the thing. Nah, let's not trade. Bishop to b4 has to be the move here. Because now he can't castle. He can't even think about castling anymore. Because if he castle, I take the knight, double up the pawns, and we're doing fine. If I had taken his bishop, it would have helped his development. So from here, it's going to be very easier for me to just play d6, bishop to e6, and he's going to have to try to wriggle himself out of this. I'm going to be posting the full Budapest Gambit theory on my Patreon or on the membership, by the way, guys. So feel free to check out the link in the description or just watch the membership video. All right, so he develops his knight to f3. Again, remember, to take is a mistake. If we take that knight, it helps his queen to move out the way, and then all of a sudden, he gets easy development for his light-squared bishop. We want developing his light-squared bishop to be hard. We're not going to be taking on c3 just yet, you know? We want to finish our development first. So let's just play pawn d6, just trying to finish my development here. Okay, getting his rook on the file isn't too bad. I think he wants to take, and I'm not going to be able to play pawn takes due to the pin, which is fine. Let's just continue to develop, because if he takes on e5, I'm going to take with the knight, and I'm going to have two pieces attacking his c4 pawn. If he tries to play b3 to protect the c4 pawn, then that will be leaving his knight unprotected, and there's no knight to d5 because the knight is pinned. Maybe he should move his queen, but then if he moves his queen, then I'm not sure if I'm going to take, but taking isn't a bad idea. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking about f5. Okay, pawn c4, not bad. I was attacking the pawn, he just moves it forward. That's not bad at all. That's a pawn though, right? Why can't I just take the free pawn on e2? Because the knight is pinned. I could also try bishop c4, hit the queen. But once he moves the queen, I have nothing. Maybe I could check, but that's all I get. There is also f5, but taking on a2 is a free pawn. I don't want to get too greedy, but it has to be a pawn. And if he takes with the knight, I take with my knight. Yeah, let's just grab the pawn. His knight on a2 is pinned, guys. Remember what we said about pin pieces? Pin pieces does not protect. If he takes on d6, we take back on d6 with the c pawn, and my queen could even get to the a5 square and apply more pressure to his knight. Okay, he took. This has to be good for us, by the way. Let's take with the pawn. Had to take with the pawn. I don't want to pull my pieces back or self-pin my bishop, but queen to a5 applies more pressure to the knight. It also allows me to easily get my rooks in the game. And again, bro's king is just stuck in the center of the board. Okay, he took. We cannot take with the d pawn because it loses the queen, so we have to take with the knight. Maybe he's gonna play f4. F4 would be the only move that would make me a bit uncomfortable. Instead, he plays queen to b5, which also makes some sense. He's trying to attack the bishop. If I move the bishop, then I lose this knight, and it is also preventing queen a5, because now if I play queen a5, he trades the queen, the rook takes on d6, and he would have a decent position. So what to do here? All right, I think I'm actually going to continue with the plan of queen a5. It's not something that I want to do, but it's the only way to try to play for an advantage because he's attacking my bishop. Now, what I'm noticing is if he takes, my bishop no longer guards the d6 pawn. But if the rook takes on d6, I could try something like rook to c8, and I'm applying more pressure to the knight. So if he tries to get castled, then I should be able to win back the pawn. And if he tries to use the time to not lose the pawn, then it keeps his king in the center of the board a bit longer. So that's my plan. He finally decided to trade the queens after thinking about it for a while, and then he plays rook to h1, which is a very nice move. That's a fork, by the way. So if I move this bishop, I lose my bishop, which means I have to first save this bishop, and the only way to save this bishop is to take the knight. Now once he takes back, I'll get the time to save this bishop. I'm thinking of playing bishop to c4. I mean, my a2 pawn is also hanging. It's kind of a crazy scenario. In fact, let's just pull the bishop back to e6. He's not able to take on a2 because his back rank is a bit weak. So if he takes with the bishop, knight c6 wins the bishop. If he takes with the rook, which is what he did, I take the rook. And once the bishop takes, we play rook to a8. Now, I'm not down by a pawn, by the way. The position is equal, but he's going to have the hardest time to finish his development, especially since I'm able to play rook to a1 check. Now he has to move his king. Once he moves his king, there's no moving this light squared bishop. I think he's losing the game here. Yeah, this is now GG's. You don't want to be too greedy with your king in the center of the board, though. Good game, bro. So he moves the king. I want you guys to notice how my rook is spinning his bishop. And if he tries to move the bishop out the way, he's going to lose his rook. What do we do when a piece is pinned? We must PP on the PP. And that's why we're going to play the move bishop to c4. Put pressure on the pin piece. If he takes my bishop, I take his rook, we're winning the game. If he doesn't do anything, we take the free bishop and we're winning the game. By the way, if you're watching the video this far and you forgot to like the video, the like button is just somewhere right there. Just click the like button, continue watching the video. Appreciate it loads. Okay, he took on e5 first. Should be fine though. Let's just take that bishop. No need to rush. And I'm assuming he's going to take my bishop and then I'm going to take the rook. But it's just going to be a huge advantage. I don't need more than an exchange to win the game. But he also has no time on the clock. He chooses to lose an entire 3 points instead of losing 2 points. And he's also forced to trade the rooks. I mean, rook to h2. Who wants to play a move like rook to h2? Now I'm just going to slowly get my king in the game. And I'm also just waiting until his time runs out, to be honest, because he only has like 30 seconds on the clock. So he pushed a random pawn. Let's continue to get the king active. Now he's trying to get his rook in the game. Let's continue to activate the king. He's pulling his king back. Not sure what it does. King activity is just crucial in the end game. So that's what we're going for. He moves the king again. Another thing that is crucial in the end game is to attack weak pawns. He guarded the pawn. Now I'm going to play g5 so that way he's not able to move any of his pawns. And eventually my king is going to walk around and win the game. So he moves his king. We attack weak pawns. He's attacking my rook. Okay, I could take, but then he checks. So let's just play rook to c1. Now he has two. Oh my god. Okay, luckily he has no time on the clock. That's kind of crazy, guys. I blundered the bishop. That's very crazy. But he has no time on the clock, so I'm still going to win the game. I'm already ahead by 1 pawn. That's another pawn. And we're going for a third pawn. Yeah, let's just take all the pawns off the board. I mean, in my defense, I was expecting this guy to resign, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure it should not be hard for us here to see how to win a game being ahead by 3 pawns. But let's start rolling the pass pawn up the board. Let's keep rolling the pawns up the board. Now we move the rook out the way, continue to roll the pawn up the board. Now I'm going to check here first because if I push, the king is going to go here. So we check, force the king on the square, then we push the pawn. And now there's no way to prevent a queen, but he lost. More Budapest Gambit against 1,600 players. Stick around. More Budapest Gambit against 1,000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1,600. We're playing some more aggressive Budapest Gambit. Once they go c4, that's where the Gambit comes in. Pawn to e5, sacrificing the pawn. Let's see if we're going to see, okay, someone accepts the Gambit. Now we go knight g4, hit the pawn. And there's many ways in which white could continue here. Knight to f3 is one way to do it. Now, there's also more than one ways in which black could do this. There's pawn to d6, which is the more trappy version, and there's just the regular knight to c6. Now, the regular knight to c6 is just being like, hey, I'm just trying to win back the pawn, which is just it's a good way to play if you're not trying to trap someone. At the lower level, you could definitely check to see if they're going to fall for the trap, but at the higher level, they're most likely won't. So let's just develop, try to win back the pawn this way. Knight c3 was played. There's bishop to b4, which pins the knight. There's also bishop to c5, which apply pressure to the pawn on f2. Both of these are good moves, by the way. Well, let's just go with bishop to c5 here, applying some pressure to the f2 pawn. And then once they play pawn to e3, if you notice, this bishop is now blocked in, which, it's usually good for us when they block the bishop in. Now I'm just going to use the time to get my king out the center of the board. Taking back the pawn on e5 was also fine, but, we could always take that pawn back whenever we want. There's definitely queen to d5, which tries to make it annoying, but it's not too annoying. All right, now we want to start the attack. We want to start the attack. He's not trying to chase away the knight. I like for them to chase away the knight, then I take the pawn. So I'm going to play this move pawn to a5, which is very thematic in this line, by the way. It prevents any a3, b4 ideas, and it comes with a lot of rook a6 ideas. Now, this rook a6 idea is just such a nice idea in this line. Okay, he got his king out the center of the board. Now I'm going to choose to take back the pawn. Let's just take back the pawn. If knight takes, I takes. And I don't necessarily want to play d6 until I get my rook over to this square. But still have to think about it, because if I put the rook on h6 with the bishop on c1, he can always play e4. So it's usually best when the bishop is on b2. If the bishop is on b2, then it's nice if I put my rook on h6. But let's see how he continues. Okay, immediate knight d5, not taking because to take is a mistake. Guy knows what he's doing. Rook to e8 is an idea. I'm not sure. I don't want to play d6 because I want my rook a6, rook b h6 idea to work. There's knight takes, bishop takes, then knight e5, by the way, which hits the bishop and the pawn. I'm assuming he's going to be forced to pull the bishop back. Rook a6 in that line is weird, though. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I'm gonna go rook to e8. Rook to e8 it's a very universal move. It's one of those moves that you're always gonna play anyways. I mean, it puts the rook on the file, and then I'll consider if I want to put the rook on a6. But based on what I'm seeing, more than likely I'm just gonna play d6 and develop normally. Okay, b3 was played. B3 was played. I like where this is going. He's trying to fianchetto the bishop. I like where this is going. I think it's going to allow me to play the rook a6 idea. Rook a6, bishop b2. And then how do we swing the rook over to h6? We take the bishop and then play knight e5, hit the bishop. And if he decides to take, then we take back and we're fine. If he pulls the bishop back, then we go rook h6 and we get exactly what we wanted. So let's start with rook to a6. That was the whole idea. Bishop moves to b2. Now, we definitely need to be careful about our pawn on g7 though, but there's no queen to d4 idea just yet. So let's continue with the plan. We take on f3 with check. Bishop takes is the only move. We put the knight on e5 to hit the bishop. And okay, maybe he moves the bishop, maybe he doesn't. If he doesn't move the bishop, I may not take the bishop. And eventually, I'm also going to be able to play pawn c6 to chase away this knight. But I just want my rook on h6. Like, if my rook goes on h6, it feels like I cheat getting rooks on files, because usually you get the rook in the game on the file. This is a good way to do it. Bishop to d4, that's a weird move, bro. What the heck was that? Okay, bishop to d4 is definitely a weird move, because can't I double up his pawns if I just take the bishop? Like, if I take the bishop and he plays queen takes, I take with check, pawn takes, he gets double pawns. And after I double up his pawns, rook to h6, and then his h pawn is going to be too weak. There's king h1 at that point, though, and I mean, I'm not sure who is attacking who because queen h4 is not an idea. Maybe I should just take. No, if I take on d4, pawn takes is good. So wait, no. Actually, no, he's just always gonna play pawn takes, right? Like if I take with the bishop, he's gonna play pawn takes. That's not double pawns. If I take with the knight, he's gonna play queen takes. That's not double pawns. So I'm tripping. Okay, how does this work? You know what? I don't think I like the idea of trading the bishops anymore because if I take stakes, his rook gets the file, and that's a bit annoying. Maybe I should pull the bishop back to f8. And once my bishop is on f8, I'm not going to be worried about anything on g7. And eventually, I could pull my bishop back in the game. And I don't open this file for his rook. I don't want to open the e file, especially since I'm going to be swinging my rook over to g6. So now my plan is to go rook h6 or rook g6. And especially since I didn't take the bishop, I should be able to play rook h6 with plans of playing rook queen h4. But instead, he gave up the knight for the bishop. That's even better for us. Now we play rook takes. Can't I try to swing both of the rooks pointing towards his king now? Wait, is he going to play queen to d4 hit the rook? Queen d4 hits the rook, there's rook g4. And then after rook to g4, there's rook g6. Two rooks on the g file, and it's not even a legal file, if that makes sense. Okay, he plays queen c2 instead. Queen c2 is fine. I mean, maybe he should have attacked the unprotected rook, but now I'm able to play rook to h6. Rook h6, I'm trying to play queen h4 and start the attack. There's definitely a piece on my half of the board, and pawn c6 is going to solve that issue. And one of the reasons why I decided to pull my bishop back to f8 was once I play c6, I still need to develop my light squared bishop. So, and I'm not going to play d5 because he has so much control over d5. So I'm actually going to play d6. But once I play d6, he's going to target the d pawn. But now that the bishop is on f8, he's not going to be able to target the d pawn. Okay, he moves the queen over to e2. I guess he just wants pieces close to his king. I'm not planning on sacrificing because that doesn't work because the bishop is here. Immediate queen to h4 runs into pawn h3. But pawn h3, there's pawn d6, and then there is sacrificial ideas on h3. The thing about queen h4 is queen h4, pawn h3, pawn d6, there's knight c7. The question is, do I care? If knight c7, we sack the bishop. If he takes, there's queen takes. At that point, he's just going to move the rook. But then if he moves the rook, there's rook g6, and he's mated. Okay, I don't think I care about my c pawn. Queen h4. Let's go queen h4. I like what's happening now. It's I'm attacking him with major pieces, which is crazy because major pieces are not usually in the game this early. You know, we're 16 moves in the game, by the way, guys. Like the only move that does not immediately lose the game is h3. And yes, I did not develop my light squared bishop, but it's because of this exact reason. So you have to know and understand when to break principles. I'm breaking principles, but I was still being productive. Pawn to d6. Oh, I guess he wants to play knight f4 to guard it, but I should be able to play g5. So let's just go d6 now, and we are threatening to sacrifice on h3. Bishop to g5. Very smart move, by the way. I guess that's why he played queen e2. Guy seeing very far ahead. Now if I takes, there's queen takes. I definitely don't want that because it trades everything off the board and I get nothing. So because I don't want to trade the pieces off the board like that, I'm going to hit him with f5. F5 hits the bishop, forcing the bishop back, but now my bishop is not really strong on this diagonal. I mean, he has to pull the bishop back. I'm thinking of rook g6, but he's going to move his king. Pawn c6, definitely chasing pieces out of our half of the board. Pawn c6, knight f4, and then once the knight goes to f4, I'm thinking g5 followed. Ooh, g5 followed by g4 is crazy. That's crazy. Pawn c6 hits the knight, right? Knight f4, we hit him with g5. Let's say he plays knight h5, we go g4. Pawn takes g4, pawn takes g4, bishop takes g4. Queen takes g4 wins the game. Well, or bishop takes g4 wins the game. So pawn c6, he may have to pull the knight back to c3, and then pawn to g4 is still very strong. I think he's in trouble now, guys. There's just too many pieces in the attack at this point. Ooh, knight b6. We did not see that move. Uh, do we care though? Pawn g5, he takes a piece. Pawn g4 hits the bishop. He's just not gonna take though. I think patience is important here. Let's go bishop to d6. Let's not rush the attack. I still want to play g5, g4. There's no f4. There's no g3. There's no knight d7. My pawn on d. Like I actually have no weaknesses in my position, guys. Even my a5 pawn is guarded. Like I should not try to rush to win this game. There's no good knight moves. Just He pulls the knight back because it's almost trapped. Now we hit him with g5, and now he's going to see the dangers of his position. There's also bishop to g7 to put my bishop on this long diagonal, but I don't think we're ever going to need to move this bishop to take this one home. Maybe he needs to play pawn. Nah, I was thinking pawn g3, bishop g2. Maybe he needs to play. Yo, what should this guy play here? If the rook was already gone, then pawn g3 would work because the king runs. Because I can never get access to h1 if he plays g3. But how is he going to survive this? Okay, he moves the queen out the way. He moves the queen out the way. We already told you guys that everything is guarded, so I'm not afraid of anything. Pawn to g4 hits the bishop. He's not able to take the ultimate. Oh, but he saves the bishop. Not bad, though. I thought I was getting way more. But he's saving his bishop. Now he just needs to pull the bishop back, and then if I takes, he plays pawn to g3. Um, oh no, bro, why go queen to d4? That's a piece, bro. You needed to just pull the bishop back, and then if I take, you play pawn g3. And then if I push, you move the king. I mean, yes, I'm ahead by a pawn, but it's not the end of the world. No, it's the end of the world. Because once I take the bishop, it's a free bishop. My rook guards the queen. Now all you're going to do is trade the pieces off the board. He's also not able to take on f3 because, well, he could take on f3, but I'm going to take on h3. Yeah, now he's just in real trouble. Let's just take the free pawn. I'm also attacking this pawn. After king up, I want to push. Push? Yeah, let's just push. Because the bishop guards the rook. If he takes, it's tripled pawns anyways. And rook to h5 threatens rook to h2. Maybe he's going to want to trade both rooks off the board, but hey, we're the one who is a heading material here, so I'm just chilling. Okay, rook to g1 was played. Actually, let's give a check instead. Let's force the king back and then we trade. No, that's a free pawn. We need to play fast. The time is running out. My rook is not going to be trapped because the bishop controls the h3 square. He took the pawn. Let's just take back. I want to go bishop to g7, especially if he plays knight c3. Bishop to g7 just pins the knight. We have 40 seconds on the clock now, so we need to be a bit fast. Okay, he got his rook in the game. Let me get my king in the game. I need to ensure that my d pawn remains guarded. After knight back, I should still be able to put the bishop on g7 and eventually put the bishop on e5 to guard the pawn. I want him to move this knight first before I move my bishop. Okay, let's hit the knight. Very good. Now he's not able to take the pawn. And once he saves the knight, we put the bishop on e5. Oh, but my rook is under attack. Let's give a check first. Forcing the king to move. Blocking with the knight should not be good because now we're able to trade and we definitely want to trade. Now we guard the pawn. This pawn is now a weakness, but he's not going to be able to win that pawn. He pins the bishop, but now we create our pass pawns. And with 30 seconds on the clock, we should be able to win. Let's just pull the rook back, save the rook. If he takes, we take. Let's take. Plan is to improve the king. Get the king out of the pin. Rook to d1 blunders the rook. He didn't blunder the rook. Okay, push, let's take. Now I'm going to check. If he pulls the king back, it's an easy win. Very good. Because now his king is cut off. So now it's only about my king and my pawns. Now we're just guarding the pawn, pushing everything up the board, and win a very easy game. Okay, now I'm trying to check here. I'm trying to find very good ways to push my pawn. He moves the rook. Let's improve the king. Pass pawns must be pushed. Now we hit the rook. Plan is to push the pass pawn. Very good. If he check, oh, he sacked the rook. Yeah, with 16 seconds on the clock, this should be enough to win. Now I'm just going to cut off his king, check, force the king back. Now the king has to go in the corner. I'm going to take, and yeah, this will lead to a checkmate. That's just checkmate on the next move. Bishop here. The king has to move. It doesn't matter what he plays because that's just a checkmate. More Budapest Gambit against 1,700 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1,700. We're playing some more aggressive Budapest Gambit. And after they play c4, that's when we surprise them with the move, pawn e5. Now let's see if he's going to accept the Gambit or decline it. Okay, so he declines the Gambit. The thing is, when they decline the Gambit, though, it's helping us because now we're able to force them to move the same piece more than once. So, for example, because he plays knight c3 and he didn't accept the Gambit, I'm just going to take the pawn. Now, he has to develop his queen too early, and now I'm able to simply develop my knight, gain tempo on his queen. He pulls the queen all the way back to d8, and again, I'm playing with the black pieces. I already have 2 pieces developed. He's playing with the white pieces, and he only has 1 piece developed and a pawn on c4. Let's just develop our pieces very normally here. Developing the bishop, applying some pressure towards f2. He plays knight to f3, and this is where I'm thinking, do we castle or do we play d6? They're both productive moves. I'm just trying to see if, because usually when we castle, there's bishop g5. Yeah, I mean, bishop g5 is definitely an annoying move. I'm not sure if I want to allow bishop g5. Let's just play h6, ensuring that bishop g5 is not an option. And that may result in him putting the bishop on the f4 square. And it's going to be very easy for me to get my king castled. Ooh, now he plays g3 because his plan is to fianchetto his bishop and get castled that way. I'm trying to see if there's any possible way for me to try to keep his king in the center of the board, but I'm not seeing that. So let's just continue to follow regular principles. My king is out the center of the board. Now I just need to get my bishop developed. He goes bishop to g2, which means he's more than likely going to castle his king on the next move. So let's just play d6 here and finish our development. So his king is now castled. Eventually, I'm assuming he wants to put his knight on this very strong square. Let's continue to develop our pieces. Bishop to e6. Now we have 4 pieces developed. Our king is castled. He plays b3 to protect his pawn. And I'm thinking of playing d5 to immediately strike in the center, but his bishop is on a very nice diagonal, so we have to be a bit careful there. Now, speaking about his bishop being on a very nice diagonal, I like to play moves like queen to d7 in these types of scenarios. What queen to d7 does, it prepares me to trade off his very strong bishop. Now, if we're able to trade off, anytime you notice that your opponent has a fianchetted bishop, if you're able to trade it off, it's a win for your position. Doesn't mean you're winning or anything, but it's just a win. And rook to e1 is usually one of the best ways to respond to a move like queen d7 because now once I play bishop to h3, he's able to pull his bishop back to h1. But we're still going to play bishop to h h3 here, and let's see if he's going to pull the king back. And now I'm thinking of some little sacrificial ideas. For example, bishop takes f2, king takes f2, followed by knight g4 check, and then the king goes back to g1, and I don't really have much. If my queen was somewhere on e7 though, then eventually queen to e3 could lead to a checkmate. So that's a very nice trap to set up. But I still need to ensure that all my pieces are active though. So let's just go rook to e8 first, just getting all the pieces in the game. Rooks definitely needs open files. Eventually he needs to play e3. Maybe he's gonna put his bishop on this diagonal. Let's see though. Okay, he plays e3 without putting his bishop on b2, but it basically means there's just no sacks that we have on the f2 square. I'm trying to figure out if I need my knight on g4 or I need my knight on e4. There's bishop to b4, which pins the knight, but bishop to b2 and is fine. I have a little idea though. Let's go queen to f5 here, applying more pressure to f2. Eventually, I want to play bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. And I'm just trying to start my attack. As you could see, I'm no longer in the opening. We're now in the middle game. There's one move I'm thinking of that I may not play, and it's rook to d8, because I know that I tell you guys that it's important that you move all your pieces, but putting the rook on d8, even though it puts the rook on the same line as the queen, unless I have some plans of moving this pawn, then it's not going to be too good for me. So rook to d8 has to come with the idea of playing d5. In terms of moves that I'm afraid of for white, there's this move knight d5, which is very annoying because it threatens a fork on c7. It hits the knight. It's not the end of the world though, but you know it's a bit annoying. Let's see what he's gonna play though. I'm expecting bishop to b2 or knight to d5 here. Okay, knight h4, I was not expecting. I just wasn't expecting him to put his knight on the edge of the board, but he did play that move, and it did attack my queen, which is forced to move. Now, I'm thinking of queen e5. I mean, it centralizes the queen, it hits the knight, it pins the knight. Bishop to b2 in that scenario would be a good move. Eventually, the knight is able to go back to f3. Bishop to b4 would also apply some pressure to the knight. I may just put my queen on e6, but then there's still knight to d5. Now, this is a very tricky scenario that I'm in. Maybe I should just play queen to g4 to get the queens off the board. Eventually, I'm probably going to play g5 and force his knight on the edge of the board. Yeah, I don't want to be attacked too many times. Let's just put the queen on d7 for the time being. Pawn to g4, I don't think I'm going to play pawn to g5 to hit the knight. It weakens my king side a bit too much, but I'm sure he shouldn't feel comfortable with his knight on the edge of the board like this. Okay, he finally decides to develop his bishop, putting his bishop on a better diagonal. Bishop to g4 hits the queen. Um, Maybe I need my bishop on f5 and play knight g4. There's also some knight here followed by knight e5 ideas. But clearly my bishop isn't really doing much on h3 anymore. So let's just attack the queen. We're just trying to play some attacking moves. And most importantly, we're trying not to blunder while we're doing this. And usually, you know, the opponent, they blunder. My opponent has no weaknesses in his position so far. So he's playing some good chess, but let's see how or if we're going to win this game. Okay, he pulls his knight back to f3. It's kind of like self-pinning the knight, but he's taking the knight off the edge of the board. Now I'm thinking of playing knight to e5 because who wouldn't apply pressure to a pinned piece? Knight e5, though, it definitely gives him the chance to simply move his queen out the way, which is why I wanted my queen on the f5 square. But what if I play queen f5 now, and then he just puts his knight back on h4? Maybe queen to h5 is a nice square for the queen. So let's try that. So let's go with queen to f5, apply some pressure to the queen. I don't want him to move the queen so that way, well, if he moves the queen, we take the knight. But I'm trying to play knight e5. If I have three pieces hitting the knight and he only has two pieces guarding, then I may win my t-route. But there's always going to be knight h4. And if I take his queen, he takes my queen, which means my plan is if he puts the knight on h4, I put the queen on h5. And then I could try to target his pawn on h2 as well. Okay, knight d5, he didn't try to get out of the pin. Instead, he applies pressure to my knight on f6. He's threatening to fork on c7. And now I'm thinking of taking. If I take on d5, I'm assuming he's going to play queen takes. And then if I takes, he plays pawn takes, and that's not too bad for him. I mean, he's threatening a fork. How do we do this? If I play knight to e5, now we have three pieces on the knight. There's always the option of just playing bishop takes, though. And then after I play bishop takes, he's going to fork. So we have to try to deal with that fork as well. Now, one little idea that I have is to play knight e4. Let's say we play knight e4. Nah, that's not going to work. I think I'm just going to take it. Like takes, pawn takes, then knight e5, takes, queen takes, trade the queen, and if he takes knight b4, threaten a fork here, threaten a fork here, threaten his knight, so that should not be too bad. I mean, my time is also running out, so we have to play a bit faster here. So he did play queen takes. Let's just trade the queens off the board. The good thing with trading the queens is his bishop on the light square isn't too strong anymore, and knight b4 comes with a lot of threats. I mean, oh, I was about to say a simple rook to d1 saves the pawn, but maybe he has to use this rook because if he uses this rook, he's going to blunder this pawn. Now, what I need to worry about is my knight because, I mean, it's not going to get trapped, but I don't really want to pull it back to the edge of the board. Probably I'm going to be forced to do it unless I'm able to put the bishop on f5 and then start targeting his light scores. No, I like my position. I think his knight d5 idea wasn't the best way to defend. Ooh, he plays knight d4. That had to be a blunder, guys. These are the types of tactics that is going to be in my book. And remember, if you want your game to be in my book, submit the tactics. Tactics.chesswithhakeem@gmail.com. Why can't I just fork him on c2? This is how you think about chess. Like, oh, wait. I think it's wrong. Well, it's not really wrong. Like, my whole idea was to eliminate the knight. Once the bishop takes, then I fork him on c2, right? That's removing the guard tactics. Now, I looked on it a bit deeper and I'm like, okay, if I take on d4, then his pawn is going to take instead. The thing is, though, if his pawn takes, then both of his bishops are going to be quite weak. But how does that benefit me, though? Let's think about it. Takes, pawn. Oh my God, I have no time. Maybe go here, takes. Yeah, let's do it this way. Let's fork him on d3. It's crazy how I have no time on the clock. I'm hitting both the rook and the bishop at the same time. The rook has to go to b1. Like b1 is the only score for the rook. I'm going to take the bishop. The rook is going to take, and then I'm going to take on d4, double up the pawns. It's not going to be opposite colored bishops. My pawn on c7 is going to be too weak, though. That's the thing. It's going to be too weak. Ah. Okay, so he did play rook to b1. My time is now running out. I'm not sure if I want to go in this. I'm not seeing exactly how I'm going to win. Okay, but we have no time, right? So we kind of have to do it. Let's just take and I'm just going to try to simplify the game. Let's go rook e7, maybe double up on the e file and then try to do something on this file. I also need to get my king over. I need to get the king in the game before I start doing anything. Okay, let's just attack that rook. He's attacking my pawn. And I'm sure he wants to double up on the c file. I'm sure that's what he wants to do. I'm going to be forced to play rook to c8, which is not the most comfortable. But once I get my king over, then it should be fine. I need to get my king to the d7 or d8 score. But I definitely have a better structure than him. But I have no time on the clock. Okay, let's see. Let's continue to get the king in the game. Yeah, he's going to get his king in the game as well. Let's get the king in the game. Okay, I don't think trading is good for him. I don't think trading is good for him. Let's go here. Trade the bishops off the board. Now his pawns in the center are going to be very weak. 35 seconds on the clock, though. I'm not sure if that is enough to win. Okay, let's take it, the pawn. Maybe rook here guards the pawn. Now f5, guard the rook. Oh boy, how to do this? What's the plan with my king? I think I'm going to play c6 and undouble his pawns. And then I'm going to try to get my king to the d5 square. I have to find a way to make progress here. If I'm able to get my king to d5, he may lose this pawn. Ah, that was a good move, though. That was a good move. I can't allow his rook here. Okay, let's play b5 first. Maybe I should go. Whoa, guy's playing some chess. Maybe he's going to check me now. Okay, good. King here, rook here. I go here. Okay, let's prevent his rook from getting to my seventh. If he goes here, then I go king here. His king is still not able to guard the pawn. So now we hit the rook. Very good. He's not able to go here. And if he moves the rook, then I'm able to infiltrate. Okay, maybe I'm going to play d5 first. Okay, let's go d5 first. I'm cutting off his king, so I'm not, well, I can't see I'm not in any rush. We're definitely in a rush. Okay, check, we take. Very good. Where's he going to put that rook? Maybe here. Okay, let's guard the pawn. Oh, but now his king is able to come over. Okay, let's play b5. I'm just trying to be fast here, guys. Like, we have a slight advantage. Pawn to g4 will also weaken his h2 pawn. Or I could play f5. Now we have two pass pawns rolling up the board. Very nice. Okay, now let's attack this pawn. He could take. Cool. We need to keep the pass pawns guarded. Let's check and grab this pawn instead. Now all my pawns are guarded. 10 seconds on the clock though. Can I pull it off? I think he may find himself in some time pressure as well. Now we check. His king has to step back. And I'm going to try to set up some very fancy checkmates. For example, that's mate I'm threatening. Threatening mate here, so he has to be careful. He prevented the mate. Okay, let's check. And go back. Now I'm trying to check and pick up this pawn. Oh, but if he gets his rook behind the pawn, it's not really that strong. Because now I'm able to defend against it. Okay, now I just need to do this in time. 5 seconds. Can I pull this off? Well, his time is running. I think he's going to be in some time trouble, which is crazy. King here and pawn pushes the plan. Come on, bro. Let's hit the rook. He has to play fast. This pawn is now hanging. Pass pawns must be pushed. Oh, that was a good move. Let's push, and after rook takes, I take. That was nice. Check. He lost on time. More Budapest Gambit against 1800 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1800. More Budapest Gambit coming your way. C4, we play E5, and now we'll see. Is someone going to accept the Gambit? Is he going to decline the Gambit? I mean, it doesn't matter if they decline, but this guy decided to accept, so knight G4 hits the pawn. Okay, knight F3 is a possibility. Now we play knight C6. This is what we play against the higher rated players. Not no D6 trying to trap their queen. And from here, it's just development, to be honest. Like, E4 is usually a mistake because bishop C5 is just very strong. Bishop to c4 was played. This is a sign that he's trying to hold on to the pawn. Okay, now that he plays bishop to f4, the whole idea of swinging the rook over is not going to work. So let's go bishop to b4, check the king. And if the knight goes to c3, eventually, not now, but eventually we should be able to take the pawn and give him the ugliest double pawns. So knight c3, there's queen e7 followed by queen d5. If we see somebody plays queen d5, then that's the sign that they're trying to really hold on to the pawn. Right now we have 3 attackers. He has 2 defenders. Queen to d5 would be a sign that he's just not giving back the pawn. But let's see what he plays here. Okay, he plays e3. He's not trying to hold on to the pawn and be annoying. And I want to double up his pawns, to be honest. Like, I want to give him ugly double pawns. I want to be annoying. So let's just take this knight, so that way his pawns are just ugly and doubled, and then we take back our pawn. So the position is now equal, but he has ugly doubled pawns. The thing is, what he has for that in return is the bishop here. So it's not like we're completely winning. It's not like we're not winning, by the way. We're not winning, but he has double pawns. So bishop e2, he wants to castle. Let's just get our king out the center of the board. He got his king castled, and now I'm just going to play pawn to d6. Remember, the a5, rook a6 swinging over the rook idea, I don't like to do it if their bishop is out, because usually the rook does very well on h6. Now my plan is to target his very weak pawns. So, for example, I wanna go bishop to c4 and have 2 pieces attacking his pawn, or I want to take Then play knight e5, hit the bishop, hit the pawn, and then once the bishop goes back, we go bishop to e6. There's a lot of stuff that black could do here, but white still has the bishop here. It's not very easy for him to use the bishop here in this position though, so let's see. Oh my lord, Mr. 1867. What was that, bro? Guys, I have a book coming out, and a tactic like this will definitely be in my book. What is happening here? He's attacking my queen, right? What should black play here? How do we find the best move in chess? We look for checks, captures, and threats. What do we do here? The knight is the only defender of the bishop. The queen is not able to take the bishop because the knight is guarding. All we need to do is play a forcing move. Knight takes f3 check. And then once the bishop takes, we take the free bishop. And just like that, we're winning the game. Now he plays queen to d4, blundered his queen, and then he resigns. More Budapest Gambit against 1900 players. Stick around. Your opponent is now 1900. More aggressive Budapest coming your way. That 1800 guy really fumbled, but let's see what this guy's gonna do. Now he plays c4. That's the whole idea. And once they play c4, we play e5. This is the Budapest Gambit. We're either gonna see someone accepting the Gambit or somebody declining the Gambit. Now, if they decline the Gambit, then we're just gonna be playing it as positional as possible. We now take the pawn, and once they take back with the pawn, we play pawn to d5. Why am I playing pawn to d5? I'm trying to create an isolated pawn in his position, but I'm not necessarily going to rush it. Like I'm not going to take and then help his bishop to be developed. I'm just going to develop my pieces. So bishop e7, get the king out the center. He develops his knight. I get my king out the center. And only when he moves the bishop, it's when we take on c4. And why are we doing this? I want you guys to notice that I basically saved myself a tempo because he had to move the same pieces more than once in the opening stage of the game. Now, this game is going to be very instructive, guys, because you guys are about to see exactly how to play against an isolated pawn. Now, how I like to play against the isolated pawn, not just how I like to do it, it's just how it works, is first you want to ensure that you're preventing the pawn from moving. So what I like to do is blockading the pawn, and that's why I play knight d7 with the idea of playing knight b6. I'm also hitting the bishop, so you could say, maybe you're saying I'm moving my knight more than once, but if I'm forcing him to move the bishop more than once, then it cancels out. I didn't waste time, he didn't waste time. But now that the bishop goes back, I'm trying to ensure that he never gets to move this pawn to d5. What I'm basically doing is fixing the weakness. But let's finish our development first. Let's go bishop to g4, developing the bishop, pinning the knight. He plays h3, and it is not a free pawn because if I take queen takes and then take this pawn thinking I'm doing a I was about to say thinking I'm doing a removing the guard tactic, but if he takes, I win his bishop. It's risky though, because after takes, queen takes, takes, there's rook d1. The rook is on the same line as my queen. He's threatening to win my queen. If I try to guard the pawn, he wins the queen. So let's just pull the bishop back. Let's just maintain the pin on the knight, and let's not try to win the isolated pawn that way. He develops his bishop to protect the isolated pawn. Now we play pawn to c6, really just ensuring that he's not able to push the pawn. Now, there's a few things that you guys need to keep in mind when it comes to playing against an isolated pawn. All of these stuff are on my Patreon, by the way. I give more in-depth lessons on my Patreon. But the first thing that we want to do after we fix the isolated pawn, which is preventing it from moving, is we also want to physically prevent it from moving. So playing a move like knight to d5, it's just impossible for it to move. Other things that you guys need to know when it comes to playing against an isolated pawn is we want to trade minor pieces off the board. Like we want to not just trade any minor piece. Don't just close your eyes and trade the minor pieces. You want to trade those minor pieces that are defending the isolated pawn. But you'd still like to just get all the minor pieces off the board. Like if you picture this position, but there's no minor pieces on the board, then it's going to be very easy for black to attack the isolated pawn. I'm just going to double up on the d file or even triple up on the d file. And one other thing that I learned from, like most of the stuff that I learned about chess is from Igor Smirnov, by the way. But another thing that I learned from him is one of the perfect scenarios to go in when you're playing against an isolated pawn is to have a position where it's queen and rook versus queen and rook. That's like the perfect scenario. But let's see how this is going to play out. Okay, he's getting his rook on the file. Not bad. I mean, rooks needs files, so I'm also going to get my rook on the file as well. Not trying to rush this. Notice I'm not necessarily taking his bishop because it's going to help him to isolate his pawn. So he pulls his bishop back, and he's basically just trying to get his knight out of the pin. I guess he wants to play knight e5. I'm thinking of playing bishop to b4 here, though. That's a nice move. Bishop b4 pins the knight, and now he has to go back with two of his pieces. That cannot be comfortable. Well, let's do that. Let's go bishop to b4, pin the knight. We're also applying more pressure to his bishop, so I'm assuming he has to pull the bishop back to e2. And from here, I may even play queen to a5, applying more pressure, attacking this pawn. Okay, he plays immediate pawn to a3, which just blunders a pawn. So, okay, now it's just completely different because I have two pieces attacking e3. He only has one. Yes, my bishop is under attack, which is why I'm thinking of taking on c3 first. Or another thing I could do is to take on c3 with the knight. And because this pawn is overworked, once he takes back, I hit the rook. But then the rook goes to b1 and attack this pawn. So because I'm trying to win a pawn here, I'm first going to take on c3, giving up the bishop here, but I'm going to get it back here. Now we take on e3, and we basically didn't win the isolated pawn. He basically lost due to a tactic, so I'm going to work with that now. I'm just ahead by a pawn, so it's just a matter of trades until we win this game now. We still need to ensure that we get our a rook in the game. It's not doing anything. Knight e5, okay. Again, it's just a matter of trade. So let's just trade the pieces off the board. Let's just take, and then once the rook take, we take. And the pieces are coming off the board. That's what we want, especially since the queen and the knight is on the same line like this. Queen e7 shouldn't be bad. I'm pinning the knight. If the knight move, he loses the queen. Eventually, I'm going to play rook to e8. All my pieces are going to be doing something, which is why he moves his queen out the way. Very smart. Need to get this rook doing something, though. Rook to e8. There's rook to b8. And then the moment I move this pawn, I lose this pawn because of the drawback principle. And if I pull my knight back to d7, I still lose this pawn because of the drawback principle. So I'm thinking knight e4 to d6. Knight e4, rook e1, knight d6 is nice. Because once I'm able to guard d6, then I should be fine. If rook e1, knight d6, there's no knight discovered attacks that I'm afraid of because the knight has to go somewhere where it keeps the rook guarded. He plays rook to b1 instead. Again, if b6, I lose the pawn. So knight d6 was the initial idea. Now my pawn is guarded. Eventually, I want to play f6 to chase away his knight, but I have to be a bit careful because the moment I play f6, I will be exposing my king on this diagonal. A4 didn't do much. Now I want to play f6. If he checks, I play king f8. Maybe I should play king h8, but I don't think it matters. Yeah, I think it does matter where I put my king. Let's not do this in a rush. F6 for sure, though. Let's go f6 for sure because my knight guards the f7 square. So if he checks, we go king h8. His knight is not able to check. And then once the knight check, I could also swing the rook in the game. If he doesn't do it, then I just swing the rook in the game. Well, he didn't check. I mean, he can always put his knight on c5, but I have my own plan. He didn't check. I'm going to check. The knight is unprotected. The king is exposed. Queen e3 is technically not a fork, but because he's able to block with the knight, but that's just going to make my life so much easier. Because now the knight is pinned. We know what to do with pinned pieces. Knight e4, pp on the pp. And then I'm just going to trade everything off the board. Yeah, let's just apply some pressure to the knight. He's not able to take because he loses the knight, and then I'm just going to take the knight on the next move. Well, usually we don't take material until they try to get out of the pin, so that's also something to keep in mind. I am also applying pressure to the c3 pawn twice, so he also has to ensure that he doesn't lose his c pawn. And the checks, I mean, anytime he checks, just king h8, I'm fine. So the rook goes over to f1, trying to guard the pawn, which means he's really attacking this pawn now. And if I take this pawn, he's more than likely going to take. I want to ensure that I keep the position simple, so let's just take. And then once the rook takes, the rook is now pinned. My pawn on b6 is under attack though, so let's not get too fancy. Let's just protect the pawn, swing the rook over in the game. Okay, he moves his king out of the pin. Let's get our rook on the open file. The only weakness I have is this. I want you guys to notice I'm always trying to pay attention to my weaknesses. Rook to f3 was played. I mean, my queen is under attack, so let's just move the queen out the way. Plus, it comes with check, so that should not be bad. He moves the king, and now I want to play rook to e7 to hit the queen. But he's always going to be able to check my king and gain back the tempo. Let's just play h5 here. The idea is to play h4, so that way if his rook tries to go away from the third rank, my queen is able to get to g3, and then the rook could swoop in with checkmate. So like my position here, it's just complete winning. I also have enough time on the clock. I mean, he has more time than me, but should be enough time to win. All right, why did he move his queen to c2? I guess he wants to put the queen here, hit the unprotected pawn, hit the rook, start some attack on my king. Not afraid of that though. Let's continue with the plan. Pawn to h4, which means the queen guards the pawn. Now if he, he's also threatening some rook check ideas. We have to be careful. We still have to be careful. So let's say we play, okay, I'm thinking queen e4, he takes, then I takes, rook takes. That's not good for me. He's not threatening my rook, but he's threatening my pawn, which is unprotected. All right, let's just pull the queen back to e6. Ooh, very tricky, very tricky. Because he's still able to play rook takes. Because I can't play pawn takes, and after queen takes, he take. What if I play here and then if he moves, I check? I have some little ideas. Because anytime I check, the king move, I check, but then there's king up. I need to be very careful. He's threatening rook takes with, and rook takes is very strong. So maybe I should play rook to e6 instead. Yeah, rook e6 is the move. No rook takes is not possible. Queen check is not a move. And whenever you're playing, it's very important that you're aware of every possible check that the opponent has. Ideally, you want to ensure that they do not have any way to check your king. My next move is queen e4. I have to get this queen out of my half of the board. It's being very annoying. Okay, c4 didn't help. In fact, c4 is helping me. Because now queen to e4 threatens to trade. I'm also hitting the unprotected pawn. And if he takes and I take, I hit this pawn. And again, we will be in the endgame. Yup, we're now in the endgame, guys. So you know what I'm about to say. It's very important that you improve your endgame. And the full endgame guide is on my Patreon. Okay, I am assuming he wants to start rolling his pawn. So let's just get the king as close over as possible. He's also trying to get his king over. We shouldn't allow that. Let's try to cut off that king. Remember, it's very important that we activate our king, but we don't want him to activate his king. Pawn push is very strong though. Pawn push takes king over, and I should be, once my king is able to prevent his pawn from rolling, then that should be good enough. Now my weakest pawn is h4. He hits the rook. Uh, let's go rook here, actually. Let's attack weak pawns in the endgame. That's what we do in the endgame. This should now be winning. Pawn to d5 is now the only try, because if I takes pawn d6, or maybe he takes. So if I takes, he takes, which means after d5 takes, if I takes push, there's king e8, push king d8, and then I'm fine. So first I have to take, and then once he takes, I'm going to take. It also protects my pawn here. So takes, pawn push, my king is able to move to e8, and if he pushes the pawn again, I go to d8, and then I'm fine. So that's a free pawn, and we're just ahead by 2 pawns here. Once he push, we just need to get the king in front of the pawn. I also have connected pass pawns, and connected pass pawns is a winning advantage for the endgame. Okay, pulling the rook back doesn't help. That only allows my king to get access in front of the pawn even earlier. He's trying to advance his king. Now we play king to d6. Now that the pawn has nowhere to go, he moved this king. And from here, it's just a matter of rolling the pawn up the board. But let's play f5 first, so that way I'm able to check, get my rook to e5, and win a third pawn. All right, he moves the rook, hitting this pawn. Let's just guard it. Remember, we don't want to be trading the pawns in the end game. We want to be winning the pawns. So I'm just going to take this pawn next move. And he tries to guard it with his rook, but the plan was to check him here first, force away the king. Now we put the rook on e5. We have 2 attackers. He has 1 defender. Now we take the pawn. He also has 4 seconds on the clock. Pass pawns must be pushed, and he lost. With that being said, more Budapest Gambit against 2000 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 2000. Let's finish off with a banger of our Budapest Gambit. Pawn c4, we play pawn e5. And will we see a Budapest Gambit accepted? Or will we see some declined variation of the Gambit? Let's see. He accepts the Gambit. Very nice. Let's go knight g4, hit the pawn. The whole idea is trying to win back the pawn. There's not a lot of ways in which white could do to try to hold on to the pawn. Knight c6, and there is bishop f4. If bishop f4, we should be able to check and then play queen to e7, or we should be able to play bishop c5 and then queen e7. He plays pawn e4, which is already a weird move for 2000. I think he thinks I'm going to immediately take back the pawn, but I'm in no rush to take back the pawn, bro. Like, what exactly is he going to play if I play bishop c5? Like, okay, let's think. Bishop c5, there's queen d5, but then I take with check. Bishop c5 is just strong. Like, it's crazy. Am I already winning here? I mean, not winning in terms of, okay, you're getting checkmated, but he knows. I mean, for a 2000 player, being able to take this pawn on f2 this early could mean it's coming to an end. Okay, he puts the bishop in the way, bishop e3. I mean, I have two pieces covering the square. He only has one, so it's definitely a free pawn. The question is, what's the correct way to take the pawn? Do we take with the bishop so that we were able to gain the tempo on the queen? In that situation, he moves the queen, we take the pawn, he takes with the rook, he's not able to get castled. He's still gonna lose the pawn on e5, or king is gonna get castled, or we take with the knight and then take with the bishop, still not gonna be able to get castled, but he's gonna get the tempo on the queen. Yeah, I think I prefer to take with the knight. Well, taking with the knight, can't he just castle on the queen side? Let's say queen to e2, pull the bishop back, knight c3. Yeah, he's going to be able to castle on the queen side, right? Let's just take with the bishop. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it looks like I'm going to be ahead by a pawn. And if I'm going to be ahead by a pawn, I should be fine. I could also just take on e5 and be like, hey, your pawns are doubled, your pawns are ugly. But I'm going to take on e3 instead. He should still be able to lose his pawn on e5. I mean, it is on my half of the board and shouldn't be a hard pawn to get back. For example, the moment I play queen e7, I have two attackers and I'm not seeing how he's going to add more defender. Unless he plays something like queen to, oh, there's no queen to d5. Like, let's say queen to d3, then I take rook takes queen e7, then queen d5. That could be something. At that point, I could castle and then try to get my rook on the e8 square, then take back the pawn. So he moves the queen. My knight is under attack, so we have to take. Yes, I'm helping his rook to be a bit active, so we have to be careful. Or maybe he's going to take with the king, but that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, he plays rook takes. Now we play queen e7. We have two pieces attacking the pawn on e5. He only has one. Wouldn't be surprised if he tries queen to d4 or queen to d5. Nah, queen to d4, I would be surprised. That's a queen. If queen to d5, though, queen to b4 check hits the king and grab this pawn. Unless there's some little tricks on my f7 pawn. I mean, he plays queen to g5 instead, but that's not going to help you, sir. I mean, he's trying to trade the queens off the board, but that's only benefiting me. Maybe he thinks once I take the queen and he takes back, he's attacking f7, which he is. But the whole point was to take on e5. So I take on e5, I protect f7, I attack c4, eventually I'm going to chase away the knight. This is all I want. I'm also threatening some knight d3 check ideas, which could win a pawn here. I think he should play b3. So he did play b3. Let me just get my king out the center of the board. I mean, we're in the end game, so that's not too important. Castling my king is more about getting my rooks in the game rather than getting my king to safety. Knight c3, I'm assuming he wants knight d5 because eventually my pawn on c6 is going to be weak, but shouldn't be afraid of that at all. I'm just not sure if I should play h6 or f6 here. Maybe I should just play d6. And then if he move the knight, I play c6. Check, I just move, I'm fine. Knight c7, I just move, I'm fine. Let's just keep the option open for now and play d6. h3, not sure why. Maybe he's trying to prevent something from going to g4. It's definitely time to chase that knight out of our half of the board. Once the knight goes back, I'm thinking of just taking. There's also check, which doesn't do too much. Taking just helps me to, or just help him to put his rook on a better square. I'm thinking of rook to e8, and then if he plays knight d5, that's when I take with check. And if rook takes, I take with check again. So let's get the rook on the file first. Remember, to take is a mistake, guys. We should only trade if it improves our position. I want to play c6. Oh, he fell right into it though. Oh my lord, or did he? Because now if I takes, there's pawn takes, and I'm not able to guard c7. Oh my god. Wait, can I check? Nah, I think I have to take. Pawn takes is very strong. But now I'm able to attack his rook, right? If I hit the rook, he hits the bishop, I hit the rook again, and then I take the pawn. And if he takes on c7, we take on e4, which means if I take it the rook, he has to go rook to g1. Now he's threatening this, and he's threatening this. Oh boy. I think I'm going to sacrifice the exchange, guys. I don't think that's necessary, though. Takes rook g1. What am I doing? Let's just... Wait, takes rook g1. Maybe rook e5, knight c7, rook c8, knight d5. The knight is going to be too strong. Okay, let's take first. I think I'm going to take. Anything else is just weird. I think I slightly mess up this position, guys. I think I slightly mess up this position. Rook to h1 would be... I would love to see rook h1, but rook to g1 is would be a very strong double threat. In terms of sacrificing the exchange, I'm thinking rook c8, knight check, move the king, sack the rook, and then try to win with the pass pawn. I'm not sure if that's... I don't think it's enough to win. Is it enough to win? I'm sure it's hard to lose though. But is it enough to win? Let's think about it. Maybe I'm not gonna do it. Nah, definitely not doing that. Rook to g1. I'm just gonna play rook e5, and if he takes the pawn, I play something like rook to c8, and then once he goes back, I go bishop e6 and just try to chase the knight out of my half of the board. If he allows me to take the knight, then I'm gonna trade. It's gonna be an endgame where I'm ahead by a pawn, so that can't be too bad for me. So let's continue with rook e5. Yes, he wins the pawn. Didn't want that to happen, but it's happening. Now we have to play rook to c8, and after knight d5, I also like the idea of f5. The thing is though, if I play f5, rook to g3, and my bishop could be trapped. And if I play bishop e6, I lose my rook. Okay, let's not fall for any traps here. Let's first play king f8. King f8 is also just a good move because I'm getting my king active. Very annoying knight, by the way. Need to get rid of that knight. At least I have this pass pawn on the h file, so I'm planning on rolling this pass pawn up the board. Okay, he moves the king out the way. Guess he doesn't want me to play f5, but let's go bishop e6, hit the knight. He has to move the knight. I think it's best if he moves the knight. My pawn on d6 is weak though. I think he needed to castle, so that way his rook was attacking d6. The question is, what is he going to do with the knight? He did not move the knight. I think you had to move the knight, bro. But he puts his rook on c1, which means if I take stakes, okay. If I take stakes, I don't have to trade rooks. I can always play rook to e8. And then if he puts his rook on my 7th rank, I play rook to e7 and I'm fine. We definitely need to get that knight out of our half of the board. Rook to e8, not trading the rooks. So that way, if he goes on my 7th, I play rook e7. And my d6 pawn is now not as weak. Very good, rook e7. And if he plays rook to c8, then I'm not going to take. Because if I take, now the rook is strong. And if I play rook c7, he's going to check. So now I need to think about pushing my pass pawn up the board. I'm also thinking about playing f5. I really like the idea of playing f5 here. If I play f5 and he trades, I'm just going to take back and I'm fine. If f5 takes, I play king up. And once I play king up, I should be winning that pawn. I also have some plans of rolling my h pawn up the board, but I want to be patient, you know? I want to be able to first improve my king. This is endgame technique, by the way, guys. And if you want a 4-hour long endgame course from 500 to 2000 on how to improve your endgame skills, it is available on my Patreon. Okay, he's trading the rooks. Not bad. Let's just take back. It's very important that I keep my... Oh, I think he's able to check and then play rook to d8, which is very strong. Let's just take here first. Now I have... Okay, now that I have connected pass pawns, I should not have any issues winning this game. Maybe I don't even need to be afraid of this plan, but king to f7 also prevents it, because now if he puts the rook on c8, I play rook to d7. I'm not really cutting off his king, so maybe I shouldn't start rolling the pawn as yet. I'm going to continue to improve my king. King up, check, king up, mate. Funny. King up, check, king up, and then I'm fine. I don't necessarily want to be stepping in front of my pawns though, but I mean, it's 2 pawns. I'm ahead by a pawn. Can't lose this in any way. He's rolling his pawns. Now I'm going to roll my pawn. The good thing about it is he has no pawn majority. The only pawn majority he has is in the center, and it's hard for him to even push this pawn up the board. All of those king moves that he's doing isn't doing anything. So let's just roll the pawn up the board. This is winning for black now. He checks. There's king up, check, king up. But then he goes here. So let's just play king to g6 and try to be the most patient person in the world. and then I'm going to push my h pawn up the board, and that's only when I'm going to start rolling. So rook f5 cuts off the king, doesn't prevent me from rolling the pawn up the board. If he tries to get his king back, there's always, ooh, there's not going to be any rook e5, because if rook e5 takes, he gets the pass pawn. Let's continue to roll our pawn up the board though. If both of the pawns are on the third or on the sixth, keep in mind that it's stronger than a rook. So if he managed to, or if I manage to get both of my pawns here, then I'm just confirm winning the game. He's rolling his pawns, doesn't do anything. Let's continue rolling our pawn. Now that he push, I'm just going to take. Let's just take. What if I push though? If I push, he goes back, I push, he takes, I queen. I mean, both of the pawns are on the six, but because my king is here, I need to watch out for any check tricks that he has. So if I push and he goes back, I push again. If he takes, I queen. If I push and he goes back and I push, what else does he have? He could check me here, but then I go up, and then once he takes, I go here. He's not able to go back. He's able to go around here, but once I get my rook behind the pawn, it's GG's. So pushing the pawn is winning the game. Okay, he goes back. Now we push. If he takes, we queen. If he check, we go here. We already calculated everything. We're doing fine. If he check, we go here. Yes, he wins the pawn, but we go here. By the way, if he checks, I could also just play king f6 to avoid any confusion or anything that I may possibly miss. He checks, king up takes, king up, rook back, rook over, GG. Yeah, it's winning. It's just winning. Now we go here. He's not able to go back. Oh, the good thing is I was about to go here, but queening the pawn comes with a check. He moves the king out the way, and now I'm just trying to find my mate. Let's take with check. King has to move, and he resigns. Please subscribe.